Yeah, I can hear.
Yeah, so you said that you haven't really seen policies from either the Biden or Trump administration concerning AI alignment. Is that correct?
I said that in the video, and then one of the some things were mentioned after about things at least approaching policy. I didn't see it as a form of a. Wait, just to be clear, did you watch the full video? Because
I haven't watched your full video because I don't really care about most of the content in there. I care mostly about the AI comments you made. And the comment you made where you haven't seen any policies from either the Biden or Trump administration
yeah,
just shows you haven't been researching this
yeah,
because prior to that video, by 10 days, there had been a policy which Trump's energy
uh,
secretary
yeah,
himself. Excuse me, just a moment. I waited until you finished before I started talking.
no,
So there
that's
have
not
been
how the conversation's going to go. So I
well,
just
that
want.
is hopefully how we can have a conversation because if
No,
you're
no,
just
no,
going to
no.
talk over me, there's not a conversation
You
happening.
asked me a question. Yeah. So if you asked me a question, and I
And
just
then I
want to.
waited for your answer, and then once you stopped,
Yeah.
I started talking, and then you started interrupting.
So
One
what I'm trying to
second.
do is
Look,
just say,
I've seen you two try to talk before, and it always does this. Whatever you want. Do you want to have just a thing that descends into chaos? Because that's fine, but I don't mind modding. I am around.
no, I don't want to have a thing that descends into chaos. I just rather to see if we have a point of disagreement and to see if we can clear up disagreement rather than have this conversation where someone tries to attempt to be smart or something or attempt to get a one-off or whatever.
Before the shots are fired.
This is so pathetic.
Do we just one sec? Do we want this to be moderated? The only reason I'm piping up is just because I like you both, and I've seen what happens when you two argue, and it's just not. I know what's gonna happen. So if we want to try to make it productive, I'm happy to mod, but I'm also happy to just let you guys go. What do?
No, I think it would be more productive with. No, I do agree. I think it probably would be more productive with a moderator. I don't think.
I think we all agree then. Yeah, we should have a mod.
Okay, what's the point? Okay, sure. So in that case, what's the point of disagreement?
Currently, my major point of disagreement is that in the video, Avi makes the claim that he hasn't seen policies from either the Biden or Trump administration concerning AI alignment, and thus it's a wash.
Wait, how is that a point of? What are you disagreeing with?
That the policies from both sides are a wash. I disagree with that.
Wait, that's not the. Wait, that wasn't the.
Yeah, your claim is that it's a wash because of the fact that you haven't seen policies from either Biden or Trump administration concerning AI alignment.
Which to be clear, it would be a wash from the perspective of someone who hasn't seen any differences.
So you could say it looks like a wash to me, but you're also making a stronger claim that it is a wash.
Well, no, I'm making the claim that it's a wash to me. That's why I asked for. That's why I asked.
So you didn't just say it's a wash to me, right? You say it's a wash.
Yeah, but okay. So presumably, based on the fact that I asked for additional information to try to make it not a wash, presumably someone with a tad bit of modicum of charitability would interpret that as being a wash to me. I'm not obviously saying that, I have, because I haven't seen something that therefore, that exhausts the space of possibility or
okay, so then I'll present you with some of the policies that you haven't seen.
Let's just make sure we're on the same page first. So just to be clear, the proposition we're trying to resolve is whether on AI policy, AI alignment, it's a wash between the Trump and the Biden administration?
Wait, no. First,
that's a dispute that we have, and I think that Avi is trying to walk back from that claim.
That's not. Wait. You asked what the point of contention was, and now we had one point of contention on the table. I'd like to get that point of contention off the table before moving on to the next.
Whatever it is, let's get it written down so there's zero ambiguity. Because I don't think we're quite agreeing on
the point of contention is that I made a claim. So you asked what was disagreed with, and what was said right now is that I made a claim that I haven't heard any major disagreements or any major differences in policy between Biden and Trump administration. So therefore, it is a wash, and by therefore it is a wash. I'm saying
lost.
that
I'm sorry. I'm not following what the proposition is.
Okay, so the proposition is the proposition. Well, it was said the proposition is that Avi has made a claim.
And the claim is made a claim.
And the proposition to dispute would be the claim.
So okay, so the proposition to dispute is
that you made it.
Yeah, no, I agree.
That's actually why I was asking, because it seemed like there was confusion around if it's about what Avi said or if it's about something that he said.
Yeah, what I said was I haven't seen.
Wait,
any different?
Are you fighting about whether you said a thing or not, or about something you said?
I'm fighting about something I said.
Okay, and what is the thing you said?
Well, actually, no. At this point, I'm fighting about whether I said a thing or not.
Okay,
sorry.
So let's get clear about that. So, which debate are we having? Because I don't want to be unfair and pick the debate one of you wants to have. Do you both want to start with whether Avi said it and then talk about it?
I would like to present the policy differences. I understand that maybe Avi is. I'm trying to figure out what Avi disagrees with here. Avi, you agreed that you did say that you
that I do think is unhelpful though. I'm not trying to be rude, but we need to.
Sure.
We don't want it to just explode into a million things. We want to get we can do multiple propositions in order, but we just need to get.
No, I don't want it to be multiple propositions. I just want to demonstrate that given the policies that exist, it is not a wash.
Okay, so let's just talk about that. So there's a separate thing which wait a second. Sinthe, you'll grant that in this conversation so far, you've not established anything about the empirics of what Avi said. Like Avi said A, Avi said B. You haven't established anything about that so far. That's not what you're targeting right now. If you guys disagree,
well, I have established one thing about what he said, which is just the thing he agreed that he said. But that's it. It's not a real dispute over that. I don't think we dispute that at all.
Okay. I think it would be better to just drop the what he said discussion for now. Let's just leave that aside and let's talk about the actual proposition. Is that fine with both of you?
100% fine with me.
Avi, is that fine, or is the other thing really important for you?
I mean, if someone's gonna say I said something I didn't or misrepresent what I said, I mean, I guess that's.
So I wasn't able to understand you there. Were you saying it's something you didn't say, or that I'm misrepresenting it?
Well, wait. I'm wondering if what we can do here is just agree to disagree for now on what Avi said, and then just have the kind of debate about this proposition that's of interest to Sinthe. Presumably, it's more fun to have the actual discussion than
it's more. No, it is more fun to have. So it is more fun. I agree. It would be more fun to have the actual.
Avi, we can note that you disagree with her, that you don't think she's given reason to think that you said some particular thing, and then we can just.
No. I just to be clear, it was a disjunction I presented, either to misrepresent what I said or the interpretation or misrepresent what I said or the interpretation of what I said.
The conversation's in slow motion. Yeah, we disagree on whether that's a wash, right?
I'm not even talking about that at this point, because look, just the flow of the conversation was, what do you disagree with him on? And you said you disagree with me that I said, because I haven't seen any differences from the Biden Trump administration, that it's a wash. So
I don't disagree that you did say that.
No. Look. We need to pick a thing. Are we gonna do the what Avi said debate, or are we gonna do the debate?
I'd like to go in order. No, I'd like to go in order if I feel I'm being misrepresented.
Avi wants to do the what Avi said debate first. Sinthe, do you want to or mind doing that?
No,
first?
We can do that. That's fine with me.
Okay, so let's start with that and let's get clear about what that proposition is. Avi claimed that what?
But I'm not sure what Avi's disagreeing with.
Well,
the thing that I said, you just agreed to, and now you're saying
I'm sorry.
Either I'm wrong or misrepresenting you.
No,
I'm sorry.
I
thought it was asked towards me. I'm not sure. My bad.
One sec. I'm just asking you, Sinthe. What are you claiming that Avi said, and then we'll see if he agrees, and we can have a fight about it.
Yeah, so I'm claiming that Avi said, and here's the verbatim quote: "I haven't really seen policies from either the Biden or Trump administration concerning AI alignment," and I'm also saying that Avi used that as his reasoning for why he also made the claim that.
You're too fast for me.
It's all good.
I haven't seen what?
I haven't really seen policies from either Biden or Trump administration concerning AI alignment. That's part one.
From Biden or Trump. Got to deal with my 100 words per minute. Sorry. Biden or Trump.
There it is in the pop-out chat.
Oh, okay. Right. So Avi said that, and then I'm just going to copy paste that. Okay, so I heard you say he also said something else, but let's talk about that in a second. This is the
therefore it's a wash. But therefore it's a wash was the claim.
Okay, well,
and that was your reasoning for why you were saying it was a wash.
Just slow down.
To me,
this right here, what I've just written, this is the current proposition in contention. Avi said that I haven't really seen policies from either the Biden or Trump administration concerning AI alignment.
Yeah, so I think that proposition is true. I did say that, and I think it's true that I haven't, at the time I said it, I haven't seen policies from the Trump or Biden administration.
Okay, so
is there any disagreement on whether either of those propositions are true?
I agree that you haven't seen it, but what I'm disputing is the fact that you're using the fact that you haven't seen that as your motivation for saying that it's a wash.
Well, let's just go one by one. So wait, the first proposition is settled. We both agree it's true that Avi said this.
Mm-hmm.
I hope so.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Next proposition. Do we want to talk about whether it's okay? So Sinthe, you go ahead. What's the thing you want to argue about now?
All right. So I'm saying that Avi made a stronger claim that it is a wash. the trade-off between the two is a wash.
Okay.
And the reasoning for that was this initial claim of having not seen policies from either side. And so that's why I wanted to present you with the policies.
Okay, well, we'll get there. We'll get there. So the next claim is that Avi said that it's a wash on AI alignment in virtue of this, right?
Yes.
Avi, do you disagree with that?
Depends on what you mean by it's a wash. Because if what you mean by it's a wash, I don't know what the point of the giggling is, or
because it's hilarious. I'm laughing because it's fun.
It's a wash on AI. Well, let's hear.
Well, no. Here's the. Just listen a second. No, here's the move. The move is. This is why I'm going to.
I don't know what the giggling was.
You can chuckle. You can chuckle all you want, but I'm going to disambiguate, and it's going to be obvious to everyone why it's like ridiculous. So the disambiguation here is, if what you mean by it's a wash is you mean by, oh, I see no reason to think one or the other, or versus to make the further claim that, oh, there just is no reason to favor one or the other, including ones I haven't seen. Now, if you're trying to present a claim that I made the stronger statement, that because I haven't seen anything, there is nothing to be seen, then obviously I'm going to disagree.
I'm not saying that you think that you have access to all the evidence.
However, if you're going to just say that I made the weaker claim that because I haven't seen any policies for Trump, that therefore I have no reason in this moment to think there's a difference, then that's just a true claim. There's no point of disagreement. I agree with that. Presumably you agree with that too.
Okay, let's just
go
one by one.
Here's the clarification.
Wait, one second. So right here we have this proposition. It's just a little expansion on what you said last time. Same thing, and then we've added it's a wash in virtue, it's a wash on AI alignment in virtue of this. So the idea is two semantics for wash. One is Avi's just speaking about what he currently perceives to be the case. The other is he's making a statement about what is the case. Do you, Sinthe, take those to be distinct and agree that the first one's true and you want to disagree on the second?
I think there's two things being done. I think that, yes, he is making a claim about his belief states. He's making a claim from his framework, his epistemics. He's making that claim about what he believes, but I'm saying I think your belief is false. That's what we disagree on, is the belief being espoused.
Wait. That's good. So in terms of what he's saying, we actually agree. He's just saying, I haven't seen any policies either way on AI alignment, so as far as I can tell, it's a wash. We agree that's what he's said.
I agree that I don't actually agree with the last part that he said only the claim that according to him or according to his interpretation. That might be the meaning behind what he said, but I do, the way I'm reading it here is that he's just saying it's a wash. Now, if that's what he meant, I understand. I'm fine with that. Right, but the point is, I still disagree with his belief. Even if the literal statement he said, which is I believe X, isn't false, the X is false.
Yeah, I want to get to the X also. But just to be clear, so I'm not sure that there is a difference, because I think when someone says something, they're always kind of implicitly saying this is what I believe. So I'm not even clear if there are, according to what you just said, Avi, two different semantics here. Like, isn't it?
Well, no. If one could non-charitably make the interpretation, as I believe what happened here, is that when I said therefore it's a wash, that one can interpret me saying that, oh, it's not just a wash on what I've seen so far, which would obviously be true because based on what I've seen so far.
Okay, I hear you. Sinthe, you grant that it obviously he's speaking with respect to the data he's aware of. He's not saying it's a statement given it's a wash given all the data I'm not aware of.
So, given the data that Avi's not aware of, yes, I think that it's not a wash. Avi might not be aware of that data.
Wait, but I'm just right now, before we get to whether it's a wash, just in terms of what he said, we agree his statement is it's a wash given what he's aware of. He's not saying it's a wash, obviously, right? He's not saying it's a wash given
the meaning he's espoused. Well, I just want to clarify. The meaning he's espoused as being what he means by it, yes. The actual literal words that came out and how they'd be interpreted by most people, no, that's a different question.
Okay, well, I'm not sure about that, but do we really want to open up an empirical debate about how it's best interpreted?
I don't think either of us care about that. Hopefully, we don't care about that.
Well,
I just care about giving you the policies that you haven't seen because you're talking out of your ass on a subject you don't understand, Avi.
Well, I don't know why I don't. Well, I don't agree with that. I don't think I'm talking out of my ass. I think I'm pretty honest about the limitations I have about it. That's why I've qualified it with what I've seen so far.
I'm saying you made the jump to voting for a particular person
let's
because
just try to get to the actual thing. I just want to.
Yes, I'll make the jump to voting for a person based on what I've seen.
Yeah, but it's not based on evidence you really understand.
Why am I being talked over if I'm trying to moderate?
Sorry.
It's okay.
Yeah, you got it.
So look, we agree. Everyone agrees that Avi is speaking. Let's not worry about the empirical question of how it's best interpreted. I really don't think that's worth getting into. Can't we just agree that his intention is to say that it's a wash with respect to the data he's aware of?
Yes, I think that he says he believes that it's a wash, and he believes that it's a wash because of the data that he has access to.
Okay,
and I think his belief that it's a wash is false.
Right? Yeah, and we'll get into that.
No. That's not. See that part. That the belief that it's a wash is false. Like it's my belief that it's a wash is just indexed to what I have seen so far. I'm not claiming it could.
She's granting all that, Avi.
No. She just said that his belief that it's a wash is false.
Misinterpreting her.
Yes, your belief is the belief that you have is false, but the statement that you believe that is true. Like, this isn't complicated.
She's Avi, I think you're misunderstanding her. I think that she is saying that she agrees that when you say it's a wash, you're intending to express it's a wash with respect to the data I'm aware of.
Okay, so is there any false proposition there?
The proposition that you believe that is not what's false, but the thing you believe is false. You believe something wrong.
Right. That's.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wait. Hold on.
Avi, from my perspective, you should just be granting all of that, and then we should move to the actual proposition. I don't see anything to disagree about there.
Oh, so what's being said is like the credence I have about
she's just telling you. Obviously, she's saying she gets that when you say you haven't seen different policies, so it's a wash. That what you intend to express there is that it's a wash with respect to the data that you're aware of. And
the false claim there is
she doesn't. Wait.
Oh my God!
There's not.
What happened to Avi?
What's the false belief?
Wait. She doesn't think that there's a false claim there. She thinks everything there is true, and you do as well, right?
Okay, and does she think there's a false belief?
Yes. Okay. I think there's a false belief, and you're expressing statements which indicate that false belief.
What's the false belief?
That it is a wash. In reality, you believe that it is a wash.
Well, I'm not really I'm not really sure if it's a wash in reality. It could very well be that it's not a wash in reality. I'm just going based off what I see.
So based on the evidence you have, that indicates that it's a wash.
Thus far, for all I know.
Okay, so given your fucking evidence, but if you believe it's a wash, right?
For all I know, I believe it's a wash.
Okay, so you believe it's a wash based on your evidence.
Well, okay, so when you say
what the fuck are we talking about?
So
this is surreal.
Like if someone were to ask me, like, do I believe it? Okay, when you say, do you believe it's a wash? I just take it to mean that I just take that question to be that I have no reason right now to believe one thing over the other. I don't know what else, and I take that to be true. Like right now, I do have no reason to believe one over the other. And I don't think you take that to be false. So I'm just wondering what the false belief is.
The thing that you believe because of the evidence is what I think is false. I think you've come to a false conclusion.
And what is that thing?
That it is a wash. If you believe that it's a wash, then you believe it is a wash. What the fuck are we talking about?
I've already dialed that in, though.
This is surreal.
I've already dialed that in. You could use rhetoric all you want, but it's not going to get out of this. I've already dialed that in.
Get out of what? You don't have me in a fucking trap. I'm just stating the thing you said and repeating it back to you. And
I've already dialed it in. Yes, I've already dialed in when you say the it is that it's a wash. When I say it is a wash, all that I take that to mean is that I have no reason to believe one over the other. Now, presumably, you don't think that's a false belief.
So I don't think that your belief about your belief, your second order belief, I don't think that one's false. I do think the thing you believe is false.
But again, when you say the thing I believe, and you're going to say the thing I believe is that it is a wash, I'm already clarifying that by it is a wash, I just mean that I have no reason to think one is more probable than the other. I'm not saying that. I'm not making a further claim.
You have no reason to think that, and also you do think that.
No. I'm not making a further claim that that beyond anything that I have seen, there is no reason to believe one or the other. I haven't made that claim. What I am saying is that based
That's
on
not
what
what
I
we're
have
disputing.
seen,
We're saying from the
okay, so
evidence
I'm
that
just
you
really-
have access to, you formed a belief.
Look,
you formed a belief
there's
based on that evidence.
Yeah,
the belief
look,
you formed,
yeah,
I think, is wrong.
Yeah, okay, Avi. I do think Synth is making sense right now.
Then explain it to me then, because what
do you think is the truth value of the proposition it's a wash?
What is it is a wash mean? When you say that, when you say the words, what do you think? Wait, I'm not talking to you right now. Hold on, no. Wait, I'm trying to have a
roughly that there's, given our norms, not a reason to favor one over the other, given the empirical facts there.
Given our norms, there's not a reason to out there to favor one over the other.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I'm mostly agnostic about that. I mean, I don't know. Maybe there is. Maybe there isn't. That's not. So if you took that to me to be saying that,
I don't think that's right.
You see the difference about what is being said here? Like, there's two. Okay, wait, when you say it is a wash, certainly you understand.
You can have it's a wash given this set of data, or it's a wash given this bigger set of data.
Okay, and presumably
you have a stronger belief in the former than the latter, but you're not agnostic or close to agnostic about the latter, are you? Presumably you think that you've done some due diligence, you've collected a reasonable amount of data and formed a reasonably informed position.
Yeah, but I haven't. Wait. In terms, well, no. Just to be clear, just to be clear, at this point, and at the point where I said it, I am very close to agnostic on the bigger set of data. And the reason is I haven't gone through all the policy positions to do this. It's just that I haven't in terms of AI guardrails and stuff like that. No, on the larger set of data, I haven't seen it. That's why I've been trying to get information about it, and that's why I'm trying to be asking about it.
Okay, so to be clear, you're close to. So we have the two propositions. It's a wash given the data you're aware of, and it's a wash given all the data. The first you have high confidence in, the second you're basically agnostic on.
Yes.
Okay, I will just say as an aside, I think it is kind of weird to talk really about this much at all if you don't think you have any kind of purchase on that second question. But I mean, forgetting that, if you are agnostic or near agnostic, I don't think there's going to be much. Well, I guess Synth thinks it's false. So I guess there's still a disagreement that you can have there.
All right. So then, when the question would, given that, is there any belief I have that's false? Is the question.
Well, no. So she's not saying. Well, so at this point, Synth, given that we've made that distinction between it's false given the data I have right now and it's false given all the data, understanding he has a high confidence in the first and is essentially agnostic on the second. You don't think he's committed to anything false in the second case, except it possibly some very minor near agnostic commitment.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I'm okay. Very skeptical of Avi being honest here right now.
You think that it is false. You think that
yes,
second proposition
exactly. And so I could provide some policies. I just want to name the policies.
Right. Okay, so wait. Sometimes you got to be a bit pedantic, but I think now we've gotten to the actual core of the thing. So we agree on everything thus far, yes?
I believe so.
Yeah.
I lean towards yes. I'm not entirely
now
sure.
the actual debate.
Avi might switch up.
Yeah. So now the debate is really. Now we just want to talk about whether it's actually the case that it's a wash, given any data both sides can bring to bear. With all
listen. I'm open.
Near agnostic and Synth taking con.
Yeah. So if it's an agreement that I'm not committed to any false belief or false claim, then. Yeah, I mean, look, if there's reason I'm not aware of in that second data set, and look, this is why I was asking other people.
And further, to be charitable to Avi here, Synth, you can understand, even though I agree with what I suspect you would say here, Synth, that it is weird to be talking about it publicly if you feel you have not much purchase at all in the second question. I think that let me just think of how to say this.
Well, I don't agree that it's weird to be talking about it publicly if I don't have purchase on the second question. One way you could talk about it publicly is to try to get purchase on the second question.
Well, okay. I just.
Which is, by the way, what happened.
Okay.
Which is what happened.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I'm wrong about that. I don't know. It feels like you've said things that are kind of strong for given basically agnosticism on the second position. Personally, that's
that's not true. You could have basically agnosticism. There could be multiple variables that can lead to a conclusion, and you could be basically agnostic on one of the variables, of course, and you can still have a strong conclusion overall.
I don't think that changes my point of view, but let's not let's not focus in on that. You and I can have an argument about that later. But Synth, to be charitable to Avi, I agree with you, Synth, that it's kind of, assuming you hold this view, that it's a bit weird to be talking as strongly as he's talking if he's agnostic on the second question. Setting that aside, though, given that he is agnostic on that, but has high confidence on the first question, you can certainly understand why it would be important for him to want to clear up what exactly he said here and to make it obvious where he stands on the exact thing we're talking about. Yes?
Well, granting that, yeah, but I'm not so sure I'd grant that, given that, like you said, he said some things that seem to be very strong statements for somebody who's just agnostic.
Okay, well, that is important, though. No, well, it's important. It's important if I'm going to be characterized as making strong statements.
Let's do that after, because you. But we've not given reasons really in favor of it. You've not really given reasons against it. Both sides just disagreed. Let's have the main discussion first, and then after we can talk about that.
Well, wait, I'm sorry if I'm just going to be characterized by two people as unfairly, I believe, as just making strong claims on something I'm actually agnostic on. I don't think that's an accurate representation.
Well, no, but I think you said you disagree, and neither of us have given reasoning. So it's just both sides.
Well, now I disagree with the claim that's being made about me.
Yeah, but both of you. But both sides just disagree and haven't given any reasoning. So that's like kind of a wash, right? That we can just set that aside.
Well,
it's not like
disagree about.
Be careful with that word. Be careful.
No, again, no, you just did it again. Presumably, we just agreed there's no disagreement yet. But the only disagreement I have on the table right now is an inaccurate characterization of
confusion. There's a confusion. There is a disagreement of Synth and I assume. I don't want to keep speaking for Synth. Synth, do you share this point with me or not?
The point that you've currently espoused, yeah, I do.
Yeah, so there's a disagreement there of we both think that's a bit weird to take a strong to be talking like that, but you don't, and we've not given reasons for it. You've not given reasons against it, so that's just two people have said we've just said we disagree about something. There's no need to.
But just to be clear about what we disagree on, do you think it's weird to be talking strongly about an overall conclusion that has many different variables that go into it when you're very close to agnostic about one of those variables?
You probably have to dial in some things, but I think that it's just kind of weird to be making strong statements without like a ton of qualification that you're aware that there's a whole ton of data you haven't looked at. If you're basically agnostic on the question because you've missed so much data, I think that's weird.
Wait, that's so. Wait.
I think this is a total waste of time, though. I don't think we should. Why not talk about the actual thing and then?
Okay, then we'll go in and talk about the actual thing. I just want to make one point about it because I think that's like an incredibly weird way of characterizing.
Well, wait, it's unfair for you to do that because the thing is, if our side on this has made a point and not given any reasoning for it, and you've made a point and not given any reasoning for it, if one side starts giving reasoning, then that's kind of tipping it unfairly. That's exactly why I'm saying
I'm not even sure we're agreeing on what we're disagreeing about at this point, because based on what your answer is, like, if you could, almost every strong view that involves multiple variables are going to involve close to agnosticism, at least one or two of those variables. There's very few positions where someone could be strong on and have just non-agnosticism on every single one of the variables that involve many different variables. So if you're going to say that, oh, yes, there is this variable here, and yeah, I'm close to agnosticism, one of them, but I have other reasons from every other variable I've seen, or many other variables I've seen, such that I form a very strong conclusion. You're going to say that.
Can you guys like hash this out later? And like in the meantime, I'm going to just fucking go through the goddamn points. I have so little time before I have to hop the fuck off. I just want to go through these points.
I mean, I don't want you to feel like you're being done dirty, Avi, but it looks to me right now like just both sides have said a thing, and maybe you think that they're not meeting semantically, so there's no disagreement, or if they are meeting semantically and there is a disagreement, neither side has given any reasoning for it. So it's not like one side has been like unfairly dunked on or something. It's just both sides have stated they disagree. It's epistemically even. There's no need to hash that first. It's not like there's
Okay,
a bunch
so
of
I do
bullshit to clear
think
up.
I don't even agree with that, but sure. And in the sake of the conversation, I'm willing to do that. I do think what you have just said was an unfair characterization and does come off, at least in many interpretation, as a dunk. And I do think that is the sort. It's not weird to talk like that. And I think many people, almost any experts even talk about that. We're having one variable, that sort of thing, where there's one variable they're agnostic on. That could end up being changing their view, and they're agnostic, but they still have a strong view. I don't think that's weird at all. I think that's something that many people talk about, and I think that's something many people talk strongly about. I don't think that's weird at all. But we can talk about that. That's fine. But anyway, if there is this variable that I'm not a close to agnostic on, that it turns out there's something about it that can change my view, I'm happy to move on to the conversation. I don't think that's a fair characterization, though.
Okay, I'm not following a lot of that, but I just think it's a waste of time. I think either they're not meeting semantically, or if they are, no reasoning has been really given either way. So just who cares? Let's just not worry about that. Let's just have the main conversation, and then afterwards, if you want, you and I can talk about that.
Well, obviously, the question of who cares. Obviously, one might care if someone's going to the view.
Yo, Avi, bro, I got like 30 minutes left. Can we just go through this?
Okay, I think there's obvious reasons why someone should care, but we can move on. Yeah.
Okay.
So the actual, well, I don't know. Do you feel like you're being done dirty?
I just said yes.
Okay, well then let's hash this out. Okay, so what's
well, then he'll need a wash.
We're not. You understand, if we do this, Sinthe is going to end up likely gone, and we're not going to get around to the.
All right, no.
Right?
No. Actually, no. This is actually no. We should go on, because I'm interested in hearing if there's any reason. I do want to continue that conversation after Sinthe with you, sure, because I do think it's important that you understand it. But yes, I am. Look, in the interest, because I am actually interested in knowing if there are policy positions that would change my view. So I do want to have that conversation.
Okay, so the proposition is that it's a wash, given all the data, or whatever data can be brought to bear. So let's just see, with both sides bringing whatever they can to the table, where the reasons go towards wash or not, with Sinthe taking con and Avi taking agnostic.
Sounds good to me.
Okay.
Sure. So, Avi, here are a couple of different claims that Trump has made. So one is that on Aiden Ross's stream, while Trump was on there, which is ridiculous that that's real now, but on Aiden Ross's stream, Trump claims that he wants to double U.S. electricity generation to increase AI capabilities. So that would mean that, according to Trump, according to his publicly espoused views, he wants to make at least half of U.S. energy generation being used for AI capabilities. The other one is that prior to the release of the video, by about 10 days, Trump had signed executive orders deregulating coal, which his energy secretary had openly stated are being used to meet AI electricity demand. So those are two big ones for the ways in which Trump is increasing AI capabilities. I can go through more if you want, though.
I mean, I'd like to know more, but I don't see how those two policies give me reason to not think it's a wash.
Well, those two would give you reason to not think it's a wash, because they give you reason to think that Trump is worse on AI, given that he wants to increase capabilities massively.
I don't see how increasing AI capabilities massively makes it not a wash. We already
You agree it's an increase in risk if we have an increase in capabilities, right?
No, not necessarily, compared to the counterfactual of not doing that.
The counterfactual of not doing it would not be one where you change the amount of alignment research that's being done or safety research. It's the amount of the difference here is that he wants very clearly to increase capabilities research. This would be like saying, well, there's actually no more risk in pandemics, even when you have more diseases. Like, clearly there's more risk. Clearly there's more risk as there's an increase in capabilities for AI. There's going to be more risk from AIs using those capabilities to do bad things. If there was no capabilities, just to clarify, if there was a zero capability of AI, if there was no capabilities research ever done, would there be any risk?
Yeah, no, I'm not disputing that. The reason I'm saying that this is a scenario where it's not clear to me, it's not a scenario where doing this doesn't increase the risk compared to the counterfactual, and this was covered in the video, was that if we're in a situation where multiple different countries, including ones that are not aligned with us, are racing toward AI, then in a situation like that, it would be better and preferable to race toward AI. So, for example,
totally disagree.
Okay, well if we disagree on that, then that's interesting. Okay.
Yeah, I think that an increase in arms race dynamics is going to lead to everyone increasing capabilities research and cutting from their ability to do safety research in the meantime. Every dollar that you have to spend on capabilities research. Okay.
Yeah. No, I'm not disputing that. So I'm not disputing that if they're compared to the situation where multiple different countries are racing against each other.
Which they are. That's the real world.
Yeah. No, yeah. So compared to some counterfactual in which different countries, make agreements with each other, make some sort of coalition with each other. Obviously, I think the latter is going to be better. But if there is what I'm saying is that if there's a scenario where that sort of engagement has a low likelihood of working out, or for whatever reason there's not enough countries that are going to join that, or there's going to be some other countries that are just going to race on their own, or there's going to be some terror supporting countries perhaps that are going to be in the race on their own and they're not going to join it. Then there are certain scenarios where racing toward AI actually is just the preferable option, because for whatever risk that incurs, it's just a worse risk to put the guardrails on it to the point where the other country that is far not aligned with us will reach AGI.
Well, you could say the country is far disaligned with us, but there's still enough overlap such that a slowdown in the amount of capabilities research for one country could lead to that country realizing, okay, we are distantly in the arms race lead. We can slow down and work on safety research. That's something that those countries that is a reasonable decision to make based on that evidence. So say, for example, US was to just quit playing the game and China was to take the lead. They knew that there was no reason to accelerate because of the lack of an arms race, lack of the fact that the other major world power is not willing to make that same push that they're willing to. And so they'd have more time for capabilities research. That ends up meaning that the AI that ends up being made isn't going to be wildly unsafe and wildly misaligned. Hopefully, there's at least a higher chance of it being aligned to some human values.
Yeah, so I certainly grant that there is a plausible world in which the United States puts guardrails on AI research, slows down, lets China take over, and then China realizes that, okay, we're far enough ahead in the game. Now we can, slow down ourselves and work on safety research. Sure, that's plausible. It's also plausible that China says to themselves, okay, well, maybe the United States is just saying they're ahead of the game, and maybe they're just racing just as much. They're just saying that just to race, and we need to race further. Or maybe that another country other than China that has even worse alignment, like Iran or something, ends up getting a hold of this. And
being realistic, they don't have the budget for the same kind of compute that China or the US does. They're just not a serious competitor in the AI arms race.
Sure, I mean, or Russia, or I mean, I don't.
Not a serious competitor. The serious competitors are the PLA. It's going to be OpenAI and it's going to be Google. And to some extent, you have a kind of almost serious competitor in terms of Grok. You don't really have a serious competitor in terms of Iran or Russia or any of these non-Chinese, non-US institutions, with the exception of DeepMind, based out of London.
Sure. I mean, even granting that, so I'm not. So I have to look into the empirics of that. But so let's grant that. Even granting that, I could certainly see. So it seems what the part that seems speculative about this to me, even granting all that, is the move that China makes in terms of seeing that they have the advantage. So I could understand that there's a world in which China sees it in their interest to slow down themselves. I can understand a world in which China looks at the scenario saying, okay, well, maybe we're ahead. Maybe we're not as ahead as we thought, or maybe we just need to get more ahead.
Well, China has access to how ahead they are. They have indicators that we don't necessarily have about China. So one of the indicators that China has about how far ahead they have that they are is that they can take a look at the companies that own the leading products, and they can see market indicators of whether or not that company is predicted to gain tremendous amounts of value in the short future. That gives China some indicator as to whether or not they're going to be more ahead or more behind. Previously, China was pretty distantly behind, but now, post-Trump, that is no longer as distant of a lead for, it was OpenAI at the time, had the distant lead. And so given just how much more tightly constrained this arms race dynamic currently is, the idea that China in particular couldn't just take a look at market indicators of whether or not these AI companies like Microsoft or Google are going to have tremendous gains and profits in the near future. That to me seems like erroneous reasoning. It seems like China does have an indicator of how far ahead they are.
I'm not saying they couldn't get indicators. Obviously,
I mean highly reliable, ultra accurate indicators, like for example, market evaluations.
Okay, so your position is that if China decides to go ahead and reach AGI first, then they are it won't be for the reason that they're not getting unreliable indicators. It would be some other reason.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, and again, that's fine. But again, even granting that, I do think China would still have the goal of reaching AGI first.
Of course, but if you're trying to reach AGI first, there's a big difference between reaching AGI first in 2035 and reaching AGI first in 2075. The difference is the 40 extra years of alignment research you get to do.
Right.
And that's make or break for human.
Yeah, no, I agree. But I also don't think China has the goal of reaching AGI just 1 year first either. I think they would want to reach AGI substantially before the United States.
I seriously doubt that they'd care too much. I mean, I think 1 year might be a little bit too close for comfort. But I think if China could have the guarantee that they would reach it 10 years before the U.S. did, they would have no reason to want it any faster than that. 10 years would be sufficient.
No, 10 years, yeah,
wildly outcompete.
Yeah. But that might be, reason enough to race them if the threat of China getting AGI 10 years before the United States or any other country.
I don't think that's good reason to race them. Whoever gets to AGI first is likely to have value lock-in. You're not gonna see the same kind of I don't think it's reasonable to assume or even to believe, given the evidence, that a multiple AGI scenario is more likely than not. More than likely, you'll see a monopolistic single AGI coming from a high budget state actor.
Right, but I think it's in my interest to want that state actor to be us and not China.
I think that. Oh, I mean, at some point in time, I would have agreed with you. If it was under Harris, sure. Currently, no, I think that the increase in capabilities for the U.S. is such a massive net harm in terms of the incentivization to increase arms race and the decrease in the overall chance of alignment that it's even not in your interest for the U.S. to keep pursuing AI.
Okay, so that's interesting. So you think, presumably, you're under the impression AGI will be reached during the Trump administration or some sort of Republican administration that's like Trump.
I think it's plausible that we see it in the Trump administration. I think it's highly likely, like upwards of 90% within the next 10 years.
I see.
Trump not wanting to step down from office means that it might just be under him personally.
Well, that's all. Okay, so that's all other things. So the variables here. So just to be clear, your view right now is that it actually is just better that China reaches AGI. Like it's just like if China were to reach AGI and do everything they want with that, like they just get like some crazy amount of power over the world. With this, that's actually better than if the United States were to do that.
If the United States were to reach AGI, I think it's plausible that the U.S. might be better there. I'm skeptical, but the biggest issue I have, the risk factor, is that if the U.S. is to race, and that's the way in which they get to AGI, then it's certainly the case. It's worse for the U.S. to have AGI in the next 10 years than for China to have it in 40 years down the line. I would rather China get AGI in 40 years than the U.S. to get it in the next 10.
Do you think China? Do you think if the United States were to put major pauses, then China would respond by putting major pauses of their own, and that's one. And two, what differences? Because here's where I'm at now. Where I'm at is I actually have very serious concerns about China reaching AGI before the United States. I think we have very different values than China. I think the United States has, to have China have that amount of power globally over the world, like that comes with. I have to really
standard terminology, which is a decisive strategic advantage.
Right.
And let's also use the terms unipolar and multipolar situations. This is the way it's normally talked about.
So unipolar being just China and or just the United States.
Unipolar single
unipolar means just one nation.
Has the AI multipolar multiple states or individuals. Obviously.
Yeah. So
states, yeah.
Right. So the idea that there's a unipolar situation in which China has the decisive strategic advantage is concerning to me, to say the least.
I think I have a larger. I think even though I find that concerning as well, it's something I've been stating for like I think like about 4 years now, as I've been like screaming from the rooftops about it's really bad if China gets this first. The issue is that if we get it too soon, it's even worse because it's not a matter of China versus the US's values. Current AI timelines and trajectories seem like it will have nothing to do with the values of the creators whatsoever. It seems like we'll have it so incredibly quickly that our ability to align it to any set of goals is kind of out the window. And that's the biggest risk that I see with AI currently is not that the people who control it will be bad people, but that nobody will control it.
And okay, so trying to think of what are the most important things to get out here. So you think that, just to understand your position fully, you think that if the you think there's presumably you think there's like a high security thing with China. So if China's doing this, then they're going to put successful guardrails. There's a much higher probability they'll put successful guardrails. And when they do,
I want to clarify. I understand the misinterpretation. I think if China does it at the same rate the US is currently doing it, then no, there's not going to be successful guardrails. If it's the case that one of the major arms racers drops out, like for example the US drops out, then I think that under that scenario, whoever is left will have more time to put up those successful guardrails and reduce massively the probability of human extinction.
Okay, so if you think presumably you think that if the United States is in a situation where they're racing China, then neither will put really successful guardrails up. However, you think that if the United States is not racing China, they put successful guardrails on, that China will respond by putting what you would consider sufficient successful guardrails of their own.
So long as they have the time span and aren't competing, yes.
The time span.
But that would be true for either. But that should be true for either actor. It wouldn't be specific to China. Whichever actor, if it's left as the lone actor in the arms race, there's no longer an arms race dynamic. Then whatever that lone actor is, it would have more time to pursue safety research, and any actor is incentivized to pursue safety research, so long as it doesn't come at the cost of capabilities research.
Sure. At least they would have more less risk of not doing that.
Yeah. I do want to touch on one thing though. If we're worried about China gaining AI before the U.S., then I think that the Trump vote ends up being really, really bad on those metrics. If it's the case that we care about making sure China doesn't get it, I think we've lost that opportunity because of the fact that Trump was elected to office. These tariffs have given China a decisive lead economically in terms of their ability to expand compute. Those are all, I think, massive issues for somebody.
Didn't he just walk back almost all the tariffs except for some of them?
No, he didn't walk back the tariffs. They're still at about So what he's done is reduce a lot of the tariffs. He has not walked them back.
That's what I mean by yeah. I mean, I guess I'm using that term loosely. What I've noticed with Trump with the tariffs is that he'll talk like a ridiculous tariff game, but then like he'll very quickly say, "Okay, I'm actually delaying them. Okay, well, I'll reduce them. Okay, I'm not." I'd have to look at how much those. I would need some quantitative assessment about how what the actual outcomes of these things are with the actual results of what the tariffs are in place instead of what Trump says, because he kind of acts like a pussy on this. Like he'll.
Well,
talk.
I'll put it like this: the tariffs have not been walked back sufficiently to keep us from being keep the S&P from being down 10% year to date. So we're still.
But I would want to see. Yeah, no, we could. But how does that translate in terms of our race with China in terms of AGI?
It means we have a 10% decrease in the overall, the value of the top 500 companies in the stock market.
Right, but how does that linearly translate to in terms of probability of reaching AGI before China? Where?
It probably doesn't translate linear. It's probably a larger distance than what would be represented linearly here. It could be exponential, but it's kind of hard to know that.
Do you two want to hear from Soph, because she is I think it's probably fair to call her a domain expert. She does know quite a lot about this. Works in the field. She has some empirical input here. If we want to take that.
I'm happy to learn. My goal in here is to try to understand and to learn more. So,
Sinthe, did I hear you say sure also?
Oh yeah.
Okay, yeah. So,
Okay, yeah. So what I'm trying to do. So I hear the speculative. I hear So what I'm hearing right now is that there are so just big picture here. So I hear the concern of if there is a Trump vote, Trump may be more likely to get into an arms race with China than if a non-Trump vote. There might be a stronger tampering of the arms race with China, and that may reduce the probability of arms racing leading to non-alignment or just no way of inputting alignment. And I do hear a concern that there is, with that all being said, I do hear a concern that with tariffs and stuff, a race might be less favorable for the United States. Although how less favorable that would be is going to be an empirical question that I'd have to really delve in on. I don't know if I would just assume that the United States won't win that race because of some talk about tariffs that ends up being somewhat walked back.
Well, even if the U.S. is going to win that race, I disagree. I think that it's unlikely there. But even if the U.S. is going to win that race, let's grant it for the sake of the argument, right? It would still be the case that harms the U.S.'s efforts and thus makes it a more competitive arms race, which means there's more pressure to accelerate the arms race dynamic there, which means more danger.
If the U.S. wins the race to AGI, I mean, I agree there's risk that comes with it, but I don't think I'm not granting that. Sure, there's always risk that comes with getting into an arms race. Look, the question is just balancing different concerns and how much the probability of each concern versus the strength of each concern. So I hear the concern. I hear that there is a concern that on the Trump vote, there may be an increased probability of getting into an accelerated race to AGI with China. And I hear the concern that if that is the case, each actor will be less incentivized to put guardrails on alignment concerns. I hear we for the sake of the argument, we put that aside, but I hear that other concern about the tariffs as well. The countervailing concern, of course, is even with more safe guardrails, to whatever degree China decides to put on them, China winning the race because we take the initiative in losing the race for that reason. And I'm just not. What I mean by wash, and why I still think it's a wash to me, is I would have to really think about what it means for China to win the AGI arms race, the probability associated with China winning the AGI race, what the implications of that are, that unipolar decisive strategic advantage that China may have everywhere, and compare that to obviously the other concerning aspects, which are going to be the possibility of, or the plausibility of, either of those actors reaching some non-alignment scenario. What that probability is if they're racing, and if they are racing, and I don't know. Again, I don't know if that's the most probable scenario, or it's certainly a strong enough scenario to be concerned about it. I don't know how likely it is. So, what it means is, watch me, is just I don't know. If someone were to ask me, okay, well, how do you evaluate that all on the net? I don't know. I mean, I would have to get the probabilities of each one and what I think each one would mean and how concerned I am for each one. So to me, that all still is a wash. You could very well be right, but I see very meaningful concerns on both sides of this.
I mean, the issue I take here is that it seems like, given just the evidence that we have here, that should be easily outweighing of the specific Hamas consideration or the specific consideration of terrorists gaining control of AI, given their incredibly small budgets by comparison. So that
is something that I would need to look into more, because I was under a different understanding. We seem to be under a different empirical understanding of how easy it would be for NGOs and different state actors. And this was something that Soph was talking about, of that it may be a lot easier than we thought it would be for NGOs and non-state actors to gain control of this sort of technology. And that is one thing that is leading the terrorism concern to or at least one of the things leading to terrorism is going to be a much bigger concern to me. I certainly understand that.
Let's talk about that for a sec, because Sinthe said she didn't watch the video, but we're under the impression...
Not the entirety of it. I watched the AI portion of it.
Yeah, so you heard the point about if there's significant algorithmic gains, we could get very powerful AI running on much less compute, which makes the threshold to acquire it a lot lower.
Yeah, but that would require some kind of breakthrough in algorithmic research that would be trending at a different rate than the algorithmic research currently trends at. So, I mean, just given existing trends on algorithmic efficiency in these AI systems, it does seem like there is a floor, or that there is like a...
Sinthe, self says she totally disagrees with this, but so that's really interesting because and so this is like this is important because it certainly we agree that if it turns out that that just happens to be incorrect, that there's like a really strong concern about just terrorists getting access to this, that it would be a lot stronger of a concern. Presumably you would understand my motivation for this being a lot stronger of a concern.
And Avi, you should emphasize it's not just a concern about terrorists getting access to AGI or ASI. It's you might have really dangerous narrow models, which again, if you can run them on a lot less compute because we get gains in algorithms or hardware or whatever, that's going to be massively concerning. If you can have terrorist cells running like really powerful bioweapons generation narrow AIs.
No, and just as I would understand that if there was some reason to believe that, it's just going to be China or the US and like there's no real risk, there's no the risk is just so incredibly small, it's not even worth considering for like an NGO like UNRWA getting into Hamas.
No, I'm just
to
pointing
clarify,
out
if we're moving into the, if we're moving into,
just one sec.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just pointing out on Avi's point that you don't need to argue just in terms of ASI. Obviously, the concern is just extremely dangerous terrorism, and if you get really powerful domain-specific, or narrow is another way to refer them, AIs for things like bioweapons research running on small compute or runnable on small compute, that's going to be a huge problem. You don't need to be worried specifically just about AGI or ASI here.
Right. Yeah, we were narrowing in on was just the topic of conversation of whether or not it's the case that AGI in particular is something that's washed there. But if we're going to like X risk overall, I think that when it comes to pandemic risk or biological X risks, I think it's just not even, there's no sane way to call it a wash. One of these sides is saying that the vaccines are fake, and one doesn't think so.
Okay, we
how do we defend against a pandemic if they won't get vaccinated?
Yeah, so we can broaden that as well.
Wait a second. Actually, I want to talk about the scope thing because I hear what you're saying, Sinthe, about it being a wash, but I think maybe about the scope being just about general intelligence, and that's what you came in for. So fair to acknowledge a scope change, but also I think it really should be on the one side you have this like terrorism concern, and then on the other side we can just talk about general development of dangerous AI models under either administration. So you can count AGI, ASI type efforts among those, but you could also be worried about the development of, various narrow models.
I mean, I agree that there's some worry with the narrow models. It's just that the worry is substantially lessened for the most dangerous narrow models. There are some that have links into other X risks. Like, for example, you mentioned... oops, sorry, I get a call there. So you mentioned the link into pandemic risk. But I think that if you take a look at any particular X risk in particular, not just like a overall risks associated with AI, but any X risks associated with AI, so general X risks from AGI, the pandemic risks from the narrow AIs, the climate risk from the increase in compute, all of those the left clearly wins out on. Like it's with the pandemic risk or with the climate change ones, other than the AGI risk, with the things like pandemic risk, clearly the side that's saying that the pandemic's a hoax, you shouldn't lock down, you don't need to wear your mask, you don't need to have a vaccine, that side's going to lose out on that, on the pandemic risk grounds. Especially when they want to ban lab-grown meat, also a way in which you're going to increase pandemic risk. That's a crazy view.
I don't dispute. So I don't dispute. Yeah, I don't dispute that in terms of X risk when it comes to pandemics, that one side wins out of the other. Right. I think we'll agree on that. I will say my priors in terms of how much a pandemic risk is an X risk versus terrorism or AI risks. Maybe we're not the same there. And maybe that's just because we've had quite a bit of number of pandemics, and we've just seen how what impact they have, even with the most incompetent incompetent administration or something coming close to that, managing it. So perhaps that's motivating me to think that the pandemic risks is of a lower probability of accumulating into an existential risk than these other things.
But I think we want to be careful about that kind of induction, right? We want to be really careful about in the past, even the pandemics that we've had have not been species ending. And so future pandemics are unlikely to be species ending. Well, if any of them had been species ending, nobody would be around to point it out, right?
Sure. I of course appreciate. No. I yes. I'm not making the induction I'm making isn't just as cavalier as that. It's so one thing to keep in mind is that the pandemics we had, not only they haven't been species ending, they haven't been species ending. They haven't been species ending even with some of the most incompetent managers of dealing with it. And I'm not saying that we should just hand wave that away. But if we're looking at two different risks, two different categories of X risk, we at least have some reason to, I think, to believe that one might be somewhat lower than the other. I'm not saying that we just dismiss it. I'm just saying, well, if we're weighing two different ones, we at least have some data about pandemics occurring and how they're managed and what to do about them, and even with like complete morons.
I want to be clear. I do actually agree with the conclusion that AI is a substantially more worrisome X risk than pandemic risk. But probably important to point out is there is an analogous datum for the AI risk as the pandemic risk. In the same way that you can take a look at past pandemics and say, well, even when the leadership has been incompetent, the pandemics have still not killed off humanity. They've been really devastating, but they haven't killed us off yet. The same can be said even more strongly when it comes to new technology. Everyone in the past was scared of the new technology when it came around. Turns out, even though the government was stupid at that time, it still didn't kill everybody off or ruin the economy or steal the jobs. However, we can point out that just because it happened in the past doesn't mean it's not going to happen in the future because of the fact there's a filtering, right? If it's the case that you experience an X risk, you never have anybody around to analyze the X risk afterwards. You experienced it, your species is gone. Right?
Do any of those new technologies involve like this unipolar decisive strategic advantage?
No, yes, there was nuclear weapons, but you could pursue afterwards, right?
Well, I mean, I guess that's the big difference there between previous technologies and new ones. I think we have good reason to believe that a new technology that brings about a unipolar decisive strategic advantage comes with a lot more concern than just any other sort of...
I would agree with that, yeah. The fact that it makes the powerful even more powerful is the biggest issue with it, yeah.
In a very strong way that any other sort of technology doesn't really do.
I mean, there's a lot of... most other technologies, I agree. Yeah. With the obvious exceptions.
Right. So I don't think... Yeah, so that I guess that would be the difference there in terms of with experiencing, different pandemics versus different technologies. I don't think the induction really goes through that well with just any other technology because, okay, well, the cost of just any sort of technology and the risk associated with any sort of technology, it's just not really the same. And also, yeah, I mean, especially when you're talking about countries that have very different values and reason and presumably willingness to impose those values on other countries. That sort of decisive strategic advantage, which seems to be and very may well be, I don't know if you disagree with this, a greater decisive strategic advantage than nuclear weapons.
100% I agree with that. I think that the AI is a substantially riskier technology than any technology that existed before. What I'm saying is just that in the same way that there would be an issue with that kind of induction for AI because of the fact that nobody's around to observe in the case where it does destroy us all, the same is true for pandemics. We've seen a lot of really, really bad ones that cause tremendous amounts of death and destruction. And we've seen that if you have individuals like Trump in office, they're going to do nothing about it. They're going to, in fact, be counterproductive. They're going to push conspiracy theories. And even though we haven't seen it kill everybody off yet, it might in the future, right? It's very, very plausible.
Yeah. Well. I'm not trying to hand wave away pandemic risk here. What I'm just saying is that there is the way in which the induction for the pandemic works, in which in which it's the conclusion that it's a lower risk than the AI.
No, I totally agree with that. Like I was saying earlier, but what we want to do is when we're weighing the X risk factors, if you're at the view where overall AI issues are a wash, then there are issues like pandemic risks that are drastically outweighing on the X risk front. So if we're just talking about X risks broadly,
sure, then it would just be terrorism. Yeah, then it would be terrorism versus pandemic then. So yeah. So then yes, I see what you're saying. So then, but again, I do think that terrorism is worse. And the reason that too is that I also, in terms of being an X risk, I also want to say that the induction goes far beyond like modern times. Like there's been pandemics that have occurred when we not only have had incompetent leaders, there's pandemics that have occurred when we had leaders who had little idea of medicine at all. We thought that prayer or things were the way to cure diseases. We didn't even know much about hand washing, and we've seen like the Black Plague, which has decimated Europe. When we didn't know even some of the most basic fundamentals of medicine, but even that has not turned out to be an X risk. So
I disagree with that part of it not turning out to be an X risk. I think an X risk is distinct from an extinction.
Sorry, I should be more clear. It hasn't culminated into the
extinction,
extinction or even like just perpetual like decimation of but surviving in some sort of like horrific state for like in perpetuity or something like that.
I would agree with that. I think what's important to the discussion of whether or not it's the case there's a net benefit for the Trump vote, though, is whether or not it's the case that the overall considerations on one side for X risk outweigh the other ones. And you pointed to the terrorism one, but it seems like terrorism's main function of being an X risk is the fact that it can be used as a motivating force behind other X risks. And in terms of those other X risks, even with the terrorism included, it seems on each and every single one, even according to you, it's either a wash or it's a benefit to vote for the left. So in the case of pandemic, overall, it seems like
I'm not sure that I'm not sure about. So it's the big thing. I think the big thing here, and this is what seems to be. So this is a big point of contention that I guess would persuade me, because it's the probability of terrorism getting access to these things, and that's the thing I think where we are at odds about, and this is something that would persuade me. This is if you are correct that it just turns out like we have good reason to believe that there's really no meaningful way that or very very little meaningful way that that terrorists will get access to this sort of thing or have any more probability of getting access to this sort of thing on one vote than the other, then yeah, I mean that is something to be very moving for me, because that is a big motivating thing for me. I think that all things considered, like there's all sorts of risks that a Trump vote would incur, but I think the vote on the other side, I do think that, or at least I suspect, based on their treatment of and how they engage with terrorism, that all things else considered, terrorists would have an increased probability of acquiring such devastating technology. And so that I think is the point which would persuade me. And
so given the given the massive resource gap between groups like Hamas or Hezbollah and groups like the PLA or the PLA, the NSA or OpenAI, given the massive resource gaps between those groups and these groups which are pursuing AI, do you actually? I'll ask this as a question. Do you agree that those larger groups are substantially more likely to be the ones who reach AI first?
I think they substantially would be more likely to reach AI first.
All right. So given that they're so much more likely to reach AI first, if they do reach AI first, there's a very short window of time where other potential risks to their AI's unipolarity are there's a short window of time where more AIs can be made. Do we agree with that?
There's a short window of time where other AIs can be made. I'm not sure how short that window is. That is something I'd have to look into. But
certainly shorter than 10 years.
Can we, for the sake of clarity, try to be clear about just when we're talking about narrow AI, AGI, ASI? Because right now we're talking about getting AI. It's getting a little confusing.
Oh yeah, I mean, I was referencing AGI.
Sure. Yeah. So my credence is that it would be one of the major state actors that would be probably one of the first ones to get some sort of AGI. The concern I have is not that a small group like Hezbollah or Hamas will be the winner of such a race. The concern that I have more so is that the sort of way that the left has interacted with terrorist groups out of humanitarian concern is going to be a sort of repetition in terms of, maybe we could use some AG, narrow or broader like AGI technology for humanitarian concerns. Like maybe we can get UNRWA hooked up with some AI, one of those either narrow or broader AI technology, and then that being the pathway in which terrorists get access.
If they're getting access to it in that pathway, they'd be using it as like a software as a service. They're not like actually getting access to the compute.
Well, then but that goes into the concerns about this on lower compute, because that's also one of the something that maybe that you appear to be in a different place empirically than at least what I've heard.
Yeah, so maybe I'll just ask, why do you think that they, with their level of compute, distantly after other groups get to the dangerous AI first?
Yeah,
why wouldn't we just be able to use the dangerous AI that we got to first to prevent them from having AI in the future?
No, I agree that we could that one could do that. The concern I have, so a couple of things. So first off, let me just preface this way, in terms of the low compute concerns. That's something I would have to look more into. What I've heard from a domain expert is that there's reason to believe that there'll be algorithmic gains, or at least that is a meaningful concern, such that low compute would be low compute AGI would, or even narrow AI or even AGI may be quite plausible.
I find that just like a wild view. Is it Soft? Is that the person?
Yes.
All right. Well, maybe I should talk to Soft about this at some point. But yeah, no, even with substantial gains even with substantial algorithmic gains, like just crazy algorithmic gains that nobody is currently predicting, at least nobody in the literature from what I've seen.
Wait, one sec. Let's not get into, because I think she's going to point you exactly to people in the literature who are going to do stuff like that, but we can just have.
Well, I agree there will be algorithmic gains, but what I haven't seen, and maybe she can go ahead and point me to people in the literature.
She's also going to say it's not just algorithmic, but I think.
No, that's fine. But to just narrow in here, right? If she's able to point me to literature, or anywhere, that seems to indicate that people are making the prediction that there will be such a gain on algorithms that the compute will be affordable for, or even algorithms plus compute seems like it's what the new not the new. I don't want to say you're changing your phrase. But her belief.
Her belief, as far as I understand, is that it's reasonable to suspect orders of magnitude of decrease in compute required in virtue of algorithmic and hardware gains. But I want to say that Avi's not equipped to have that debate because he's just trusting expert opinion there. So what might be smart to do is just to talk conditionally. He might grant you a bunch of stuff under the condition that that turns out being false. You might grant him a bunch of stuff under the condition that it turns out being true.
I would be really skeptical about calling that trusting expert opinion. It's trusting an expert's opinion.
Yeah,
is what it sounds like. Yeah, which is
sorry, I don't know how I phrased that, but to be clear, he is trusting the opinion of an expert. So
yeah,
what
I would say is
the opinion that there's broader consensus than that or something. But
for whatever it's worth, an opinion of an expert who disagrees with the Trump vote.
My point is just that getting into that empirical debate is not really worth it because he's not equipped to have a debate like that, obviously.
I would be interested. No, I understand the conditional thing. I would be interested to learn about it. I would be interested to see a conversation with Sophie.
Well, the conditional point is to Sinthe.
Yeah,
well, right? Yeah. Like, there's just no need to pick a path. Like, we can just talk about what happens on either path anytime we have something that we're not sure.
No, I'm sure there's like I said before. Like, if it turns out that those things are true, I mean, I'm sure that would be reason for me to switch my view. Presumably, since if it turns out that is true, that might be reason for you to shift your view as well.
It would certainly be reason for me to shift my view on this proposition. I don't think it would win me over on a Trump vote.
Sure. No, I'm not saying it may gain you all the way over to a Trump vote, but on this aspect of it being a pro tanto reason or a motivating or okay, this proposition, yes.
Yeah, sure,
yeah. Like this would be just a much stronger concern.
I mean, so one thing I'm skeptical of though is the reasoning of taking one particular expert is view. And using that to inform what would be generally considered a really strong claim, which is
this is what it gets. That's what gets into the whole thing with the variables. The strong, just to be clear, the strong view I have is accumulation of many different variables, and not all of those variables I am. So this goes. If you take the view that if someone is weird by, not to get into this part of the conversation again, but if you take the view that someone's got to be weird because they're saying they're making a strong empirical claim that involves many different variables, some of those variables they're not confident about, then I agree with you. I certainly agree with you. I don't take that view, of course. I don't think people should.
That's not whatever you just said. There is not the claim I'm making.
All right. Well, I don't know what was weird about what I was.
We can hash it out later, but yeah.
Sure. And as far as the one actually, yeah, I agree. I again, as far as what I have seen so far, if I had more information that this is hashed out and it turns out like Soph has just this fringe view that is, widely, seen as crackpottery in the literature or something like that. Okay. Yeah. That would be a reason for me to change my view on
I wouldn't go as far as to call it crack pottery. I just think it's I would say it's like at least from what I've seen, it's fringe, but maybe Soph has like expert polling or something that disagrees with that.
Yeah, but I don't think Soph presented the view as a fringe view. I'm not under the impression that it is a fringe view. I could be wrong about that, but it seems like Soph. Is that okay? Soph feels strawman. Okay, all right.
I'm not sure how I strawman Soph there. You're not making that.
Okay, but no. Let's not text.
That's a tangent. Yeah, you're right.
Soph has to pay the same price as everyone else. She can't get on mic. We're not dealing with her.
Yeah. Well, anyway, either way, either way, if there were other experts that if it's a matter of expert disagreement, then what I would try to do is evaluate that based on the experts, what the experts have to say with each other first and foremost. If I can't understand that, then I would defer to expert consensus. That would be the pathway I would go there. So again, just based on what I've seen so far, that there's at least some reason for me to believe that this is a reasonable concern and quite a plausible concern. I could be wrong about that, but so that is something that, so conditionally, that is something that presumably would move things for me as it would for you, maybe not.
Yeah. I mean, I think the doing this conditionally, I think, is a good approach. The way that AY mentioned earlier. So, on condition that we have this substantial decrease and the barrier to entry for getting your hands on the World Destroyer 9000, just a substantially advanced
AI. To be clear, just
not
to cut. Yeah, just doesn't have to be AGI. Just any significantly dangerous AI. Yep.
Yeah, if we're low, if we're on the condition that we were to lower the barrier to cost for the barrier, I apologize, the cost barrier to the substantially dangerous AI, that decrease in the cost barrier also means that these larger actors who have a lot more resources to put into it can make those gains on the economies of scale of having tremendous numbers of those dangerous AIs, which they can then use for the important goal of destroying the cybersecurity of any of these non-state actors who'd otherwise be using their technology for malevolent ends.
Well,
Is the point?
you got to point out that there might not be a linear scaling and quantity of narrow AIs possessed and damage capacity, right?
No, yeah, that was part of my point there. It's just that it's likely to have an economy of scale effect. It's likely to be the case that the more of these, the more resources you have to spend, the more efficient your spending will be.
But I'm not sure if that's meeting the point. It's just, it sounded to me, and maybe I misunderstood you, like you were suggesting that, well, let's say we lower the threshold, the barrier to entry a bunch through whatever means, algorithmic gains, hardware gains, whatever. It's still going to be the case that the well-resourced actors can accumulate a lot more of these things, so there's not much worry about the less resourced actors to get
No,
resourced. Yeah, because
there's still some worry about them. It's just that it's just that given the existence of those large state actors, those smaller actors' ability to have any control over whatever kind of dangerous AIs they create, is basically moot. It's like the larger state actors, given that they have the much larger infrastructure necessary for cyber attacks than the smaller actors, it would be able to gather control over whatever kind of AIs they do end up creating.
Yeah, so I just want to, I think that I'm disagreeing. I'm just pointing out an assumption that you have to kind of make to do that, if I'm understanding you correctly. It could be that having a single really powerful, dangerous, narrow AI, let's say, that's extremely bad, and the difference between having one and having two, or having two and having three, is like very minimal. Like, it, in terms of danger, it just doesn't scale linearly with the quantity of these narrow AIs that you possess.
Oh no, I agree with that. No, I totally agree that it doesn't. The moment one person has the World Destroyer 3000, it doesn't matter if somebody else has the World Destroyer 20,000. They've still got a World Destroyer,
or two
right?
World Destroyer 3000s. It's like, okay, wait, but
Yeah, exactly.
bad guys have one of them. That's already the Yeah, okay, all right.
No, what I'm saying is just that if one person has the World Destroyer 3000 and another person has the World Destroyer a bazillion gorillion, then whoever has that World Destroyer 3000 is not going to have it for very long. Right? The ways in which they secure their system there would not be ones in which those wouldn't be able to be overcome by whoever has the much larger budget.
I see it. Yeah. Well, okay. So I still think that there's kind of an assumption there. So it's not. I don't think you're denying that you might get a kind of non-linear relationship between damage capacity and quantity of narrow AIs possessed.
Yeah.
But it sounds like you're assuming, even if someone gets their hands on a super dangerous narrow AI, the well-resourced actors just have so much higher cyber power. There's just no threat. I think that's a quite
not no threat, but a very reduced threat.
I don't think I think that you have to kind of make some assumptions there, like that it's, you have to assume that possessing that AI. I mean, you have to assume that they can't basically just get their hands on it and do a ton of damage really quickly. You're kind of assuming they're going to get instantly eaten up.
They'd have to do their damage faster than we could do damage to them, and I just don't think that they're going to be able to do the damage faster.
I think it's just worth pointing out that kind of thing is really, really speculative. I don't think we should feel confident about things like that.
I agree we shouldn't feel confident. I just think it's like the most likely scenario here is that the larger state actors who already have a pre-existing investment into AI infrastructure, who have a pre-existing investment into specifically the domain of AI pen testing, I think that just those are actors which would have an ability to really, really rapidly respond to anybody else who gained access to the World Destroyer 3000.
Okay, yeah, so I just want to flag, like, I don't really have much confidence. I think I'm almost agnostic on that, but maybe entirely agnostic. I might lean very slightly in that direction, but I'm honestly not even sure I do. So I just want to point out that, and it sounds like you agree, I think. I'm pointing out that we're entering very speculative territory at that point.
It depends on what exactly we're calling speculative. I agree that it's speculation, but I'm not sure. I wouldn't say that it's an unfounded speculation. I think there's good evidence to believe this view.
I just don't. I mean, I just don't think that we should have a strong credence in something like that. I think.
Oh, well, then I disagree with that. Yeah, we do disagree. I do think we have good reason to have a strong credence there.
Okay.
The
Yeah.
other-
So. So I think someone can object by and put some pressure there, probably, like why exactly should we think that one bigger entity having more cyber infrastructure, larger investments in AI, just totally or largely, I don't want to strawman you, mitigates the risk of a smaller actor acquiring a dangerous narrow AI. I think yeah, I mean, we'd have to get into the reasons you think that, but that just, yeah, I think that's really speculative. You think that there's a strong basis to think that, so I'm just flagging that as an assumption and a thing that someone could push back on.
Yeah, I mean, so the reasons why I think that the reasons in favor of it, I think, is that one, when it comes to training, even a narrow AI, you're going to want internet connectivity just for the sake of being able to flush up your corpus with the most recent information. A lot of that, especially going forward, will be AI generated training data. And so because of that, you want some internet connectivity. So that at least gives you an attack surface there. That's one of the main reasons why I think it's the case that there's going to be that one institution having the ability to make those large-scale cyber attacks on the other institution gives them the ability to mitigate the potential risks there. But there are other.
I mean, I hear you, and you can go through a bunch of these, but it's just to me, this probably hits me the same way as like biological mech spec kind of hits Avi. It's like you're talking about massively complicated systems, and I just don't think we should have this kind of confidence based on sort of mechanistic speculation about those systems.
I mean, I think in the case of when it comes to the cybersecurity of these smaller organizations, I think that given just our past history, we can't make we can't make a very strong projection towards the future, but we can take a look at exactly how poor their cybersecurity practices have been in the past and make an assumption about where they're going to be in the future.
Yeah, I mean, you could build some kind of induction rather than sort of doing speculation based on like properties that cyber systems and AI systems are going to or do have. But yeah, I mean, I guess I'd need to see an induction like that sort of laid out, and I suspect there will be very broad room to object because you're just I think you're going to have a very complicated kind of system. You're going to be assuming a lot of things about future technology, and it's just not really going to be obvious that you're I guess it's going to be like a domain problem for the induction where it's not obvious that even if you amass some good inductive data there, that it's really going to transfer into the domain that we're talking about.
I mean, I feel like even you would expect that whatever hardware they're getting is not going to be hardware they're manufacturing personally, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we're going to have suddenly like, you know, people who are not currently manufacturing high-tech compute like suddenly doing it. That takes like quite a lot of resources and time to build up something like that.
Yeah, which means that whoever they're getting the high tech compute from, whoever they're buying their APUs or maybe their GPUs, if we're speculating that they've got like some algorithm gains or something, whoever they're buying the hardware from, that's an institution which is controlled by a state actor, and the state actor is, given what we've seen so far, very likely to want backdoors in their hardware.
Yeah, again, that's kind it's just it sounds I hear you. It's not persuasive to me because it sounds super speculative. Who knows what state actor is going to have what motivation if the required
I
compute
mean,
goes down long enough.
the ones that exist.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm not tracking exactly what that was response to, but just let me finish my thought.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I mean, it seems really speculative. I don't know exactly what the motives of the state actors will be, but also if you get this kind of big decrease, like orders of magnitude decrease in the compute required, you're going to get into the kind of territory where it's going to be hard to track these things. Like I guess I don't have confidence about it being tracked carefully, about the actor who might sell this stuff even necessarily being a state. It might be a corporation or something, or them having the right guardrails and those being heavily enforced. Like I think we need tons of policy to have any kind of confidence about anything like that.
I mean, even if it's a corporation, what we've seen historically has just been that corporations do comply with NSA requests for backdoors at a hardware level. So I don't see why we'd assume that or maybe don't not assume. I don't see why it's unlikely that in the future that would continue.
When you say hardware, like say that you're talking about GPUs, are you saying that like GPUs have backdoors in them, generally speaking?
Well, I'm not sure about GPUs generally, but I do know CPUs generally do. And I'm doubtful that these futuristic tech will be GPUs and not APUs. But whatever it is that's dangerous, the companies that are manufacturing hardware are already complying with NSA requests for backdoors, with the exception of Apple, but they don't really make hardware in the same. What they make like larger scale hardware.
It sounds like you have to say that the specific piece of technology that's going to be relevant to enabling the dangerous AI technologies and hardware is going to be in the class of things that have backdoors built into them typically. And I'm not sure that that's true.
Not even just have them built in typically, but are manufactured by the type of company that is already complying with NSA requests for backdoors and is the type of technology where backdoors are possible. The backdoors are, it would be wild for them to not be possible. That seems wildly
It's just not obvious to me that that's true. Like, I mean, say that the relevant thing is just like some kind of new TPU kind of thing. Like, I mean, I don't know what the regulation looks like, but I don't think that that kind of stuff is being tracked really carefully. Like, this is why we have proposals like Magic to try it. Have you seen Magic?
Which one?
Magic?
I'm not sure like what you're referencing in particular. Magic and what domain?
Multinational Artificial General Intelligence Consortium? Magic?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so they're proposing things in there to do with tracking, and presumably if these things were already happening, they wouldn't be proposing them. So it just looks to me like
when it comes to just to be clear here, when it comes to the NSA backdoors and existing hardware, that's just public information. Like I'm sure you're familiar with it, right? Like you've seen the PowerPoint slideshows that get shared around that got dropped on WikiLeaks a while back.
I don't know all the details. I know that there's technology that has backdoors, and I know there's pressure from states to create those backdoors. I don't know exactly how common it is, exactly what level of compliance is typical there, which companies are involved. Like, it's not something I know a lot of details of, but I have a general sense of what you might be referring to.
So in terms of the commonality, maybe it would just be good to just drop the PowerPoint or something. Give me just a second here.
I have like 10 minutes to talk. Can I clarify?
Yeah, you can. I just want to say it to Synth because I don't think that any of this. I mean, I don't think any of this is persuasive to me. Like, you might establish, I'd be interested to see, but what you'd really have to do is you'd have to show there's some class of technology. It's the relevant class to enabling dangerous AI. And we can expect that particular technology with very high confidence to have backdoors in it. And I'm not currently convinced.
It would just be the type of technology with large, complicated instruction sets.
Well, you're what? Are you trying to say it's going to be CPUs?
No, it doesn't have to be a CPU to have a large, complicated instruction set. APUs have instruction sets.
I guess that, yeah, so I don't see how any of that undermines anything I've said.
It just means that that's the type of thing where you can have backdoors, and if you can have backdoors and state actors have a motivation to pressure these companies to have backdoors, you will have backdoors.
Yeah, that just sounds very speculative to me. So that's like, this is my whole point pushing back here, is we should not have confidence in things like that.
Oh, I totally disagree with you there. I think it's just something that seems yeah.
Okay,
it seems pretty clear.
Yeah, I mean,
but that could be a different discussion or something.
Yeah, like I'd be open to seeing some kind of argument on that front. And what I'd want really would be, I think the kind of inductive thing that you're talking about doing, where you look at like current policies and history and stuff like that. I think that's going to be better than more like mech specky kind of arguments.
That'd probably be a worthwhile exercise, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm open to it, but my current leaning is there's not really much reason to have confidence about that. It just kind of looks to me like we have a whole shitload of technology out there. We have different people producing things, and we don't know exactly what tech. It's just not obvious to me. I just don't know why. I just don't currently see a reason to think that it's obvious. Like you just seem to have this really high level of confidence that like whatever it is that enables dangerous AI at a hardware level, whatever that is, we can basically be sure that we've got a kind of safety control on it because we know that there's.
Well, I don't want to say safety control. What I do want to say is just that we will have a lack of sufficient cybersecurity to prevent large-scale state actors from being able to interfere with that.
Okay, yeah,
Either
I
via
guess
denial
it
of service or something
just
else.
maybe you have data that I don't, but I guess I just think that it's not obvious to me why you would believe that with any real confidence. It seems like what's the word? I don't know, I'm forgetting the word right now, but it just seems like a very like you yeah, I'm not saying this in a harsh way. It just seems like your epistemic standard here is just like really low. Like it's kind of speculation that favors your position, and you're going to be quick,
No,
sort
I
of
totally disagree.
psychologize, but you're going to be kind of quick to like say that's what's going to happen. But when we actually look at things, it does not seem obvious to me that that's what's going to happen. You can have the
Have
last
you?
word though.
Well, I mean, I would want to ask a question. I mean,
Sure.
what I've seen is that I'll do it in a non-question format. So what I've seen is just that historically, when it comes to the hardware necessary to run any kind of a complicated algorithm, it seems like all of those involve in some way something which is complicated enough so you can slip in a backdoor that the end consumer is not going to be able to realize is there. That means there's a possibility for backdooring. And state actors, given their large budgets, if it's being manufactured by a corporation, they can incentivize them to put that a backdoor in there through either through different tax policies that they might be then they might gain because of that, or they could give it through direct funding. So a million different ways through which they can incentivize a corporation from doing it. And if it's being manufactured by a state actor or by corporations which are half owned by a state, in the case of China, then in scenarios like that, it just seems the state actor just has a clear reason to do it. So it doesn't seem to me to be like totally non-obvious. But I know Soph wanted to say something too.
Yeah, so we can just end by saying that the reasoning just provided there, you think that that's persuasive, and I don't think that that's persuasive.
Yeah.
Okay. So?
Yeah, okay. So the point that I wanted to make is that what I did not do in the video was provide a projection to like a certain limit, or to say that I have presenting like a clear economic analysis that will point to some point in the future where it's cheap enough to run good models. All that I think that you have to point to is sort of these linear trends in both training and inference costs and the linear trends in capabilities. And I think what the onus is on is the person saying that will actually eventually reach a limit to show that the limit is sufficient for safety. So I think that what we want really is for Sinthe to present something like that. Not
I
to
mean, I
say,
didn't make any claims about what you said. It sounds like you said I was
well,
like
you
straw
did.
manning you. When did I make any claims about what you had
You
said?
were implying that I have like a fringe view about costs and
Nope, I didn't say
capability.
anything about what you said. I have no idea. I didn't even see the portion of it where you were talking. I saw
Right,
the portion
but
of it where it was AY and Avi talking, and I made claims about
is
that.
that
And Avi brought up what you
the-
had said, and then you said that I was straw manning you.
Wait, there is a
I didn't make any claims
confusion
about what you
here.
said.
There's something that you said that is definitely contradictory, since so there's probably some confusion because you said you watched the portion on AI, but you just said you didn't watch the portion where Soph talked, and those are the same thing.
So it may have been Soph talking. I don't recognize the voice there, but I didn't make any claim whatsoever about what Soph was saying in that portion.
Well,
I made a
her
claim about what Avi
current
had
mic
said.
is definitely deeply fucked, so that's reasonable enough. But yeah, that was Soph
yeah,
talking. That was the third voice in
on
that
my
combo
phone
was
looking at
her.
a different family right
Okay,
now,
well,
so I
what I'm
don't.
saying is just that I didn't make any claim whatsoever about anything that you said in that discussion because I wasn't talking about that stuff. I was
Well,
talking about what Avi said.
but you might have been without realizing it though. So the claim she's talking about when the idea that we could run dangerous AI on much lower compute. That's what she's talking about there. The plausibility of that, and it
Well, then what
sounds
does she
like
take
you.
straw manning to be?
Well, we can talk about if it's a straw man in a second, but the important thing is if it's a kind of like a disagreement or if you're saying something about what she said. The point is just she thinks that's plausible and sees research for it, or maybe she thinks it's likely. She can speak for herself. But you were fair about it. You said maybe there's data you're not aware of here, but you currently don't. You think that it would you use some word like we'd have to have like really extreme. I forget how you phrased it, but the way you framed it made it sound pretty clear that you think that we'd have to have some kind of like fundamental change that's not that we don't really have a reason to think is likely given your current assessment of the literature in order to have powerful and dangerous AI running on much smaller compute. That's not a misrepresentation of what you've said.
I want
to
clarify. What I'm saying is just that I think that's almost what I've said, but there's a couple of extra qualifications there. I think it's the case that when it comes to that decrease, in order for it to be the case that the risk has to exist from non-state actors, that decrease in the cost of entry has to also come along with a couple of other factors. It has to be a decrease in the cost of entry. It has to be there has to be no other mechanism or existing technology preventing actors from gaining access to those systems, even with the lower cost. And it also has to be the case that the risks of the attack surface for whatever it is that they're using to run those AI systems have to be reduced enough such that other state actors couldn't deal with whatever risk they propose or whatever risk they present once they present them. So those are all qualifications that are necessary before it's the case that those non-state actors are able to pose a threat in the same kind of way the state actors do.
So what's the important thing for you here? Is establishing that something was a straw man of your view, or clearing up some point, or what?
Yeah, I don't have enough time to get into like a more rigorous debate about what I actually think is the likely outcome. The only point that I'm making is that in the video, and for the purposes of this discussion, all someone needs to do is point at, for example, the charts in general chat and just say, hey, there's these trends going on. They're approximately log linear. Why would those trends not continue? And then if someone's saying that they're not going to continue, we should expect a reason to think that they're not going to continue.
Yeah, I'm not making the claim that it will continue.
I've already accepted that there are like theoretical limits, like the Landauer limit. But even if we look at a Landauer limit, then one should be able to point and say, well, the Landauer limit means that like Hamas will never be able to afford a model with CBRN risks, which also hasn't been presented. So what I would be interested in is like a very specific argument to the effect of like, look, these are like credible economic projections that show that Hamas will not be able to afford a model that carries CBRN risks within like a certain time period or at all. What I do not want to be made out to be saying is that like I certainly project that we will have a Hamas model in like a certain date. Because that's not relevant to the discussion. Although we could certainly have.
Just to be clear, so if you don't think that I attributed any statement like that to you, correct?
Well, no. I mean, I think I took it to you that you did say something like that, and someone else in chat took it that way too. You at one point said that Avi should not just take the admissions of one expert who appears to have a fringe view. But I
didn't make any claim about your view in particular. I made a claim about what Avi described your view as being. I said that you shouldn't, even if it's the case that that expert has the view that you've just described, you should not take into account one expert's fringe view. I have no idea what you were saying in particular. I didn't attribute any statement to you.
But what I'm objecting to is that my view could even properly be described as fringe, especially without any sort of evidence that it is.
I wasn't describing what your view was. I was describing the view that Avi presented to me.
But Sinthe, by a chain of like transitivity or whatever, it's like if you're talking about the view that Avi described and Avi described that view accurately and that view is Soph's, and I think
if Avi described it accurately, and I'm not convinced that Avi did, given what's being said to me now does not seem to be the same view. The view that I was calling fringe is not the one that Soph is currently defending.
Okay, but you can see how if those conditionals pan out, it will be that you're talking about Soph's view. Yes.
Yeah, of course.
Wait, what's the meaningful difference?
Yeah, so
between
then Avi and Soph should hash if there's a difference there.
I don't think that Avi misrepresented my view, and insofar as he did, I think he could just reset the conversation how I've laid it out right now, which is just that, look, there's these log linear trends. Those log linear trends
wait. So one thing you're doing that's not fair to Sinthe there, though, is the reset. Then you can debate whether the claim is true or whatever. But as far as the straw manning goes, it's relevant if he represented your view correctly.
No. If we reset, I'm happy to say that I'm not.
She started off by saying, I do not think Avi misrepresented my view.
Yeah, I don't think Avi misrepresented my view, but insofar as it happened, I'm happy to just set aside the straw manning thing and just say, look, Avi could just say this, and then what's the response?
Sure.
Because I don't think the straw manning thing is like super important. Like I was just frustrated because I was in text and I felt misrepresented. But I think I'm represented now, and I think Avi has made similar arguments that I'm making in other cases like LabMeet. And so I just think that like he'll already be prepared to present the sort of thing that I'm
So
suggesting. And at a
view
future
that
date,
I'm
I'd be more happy to like lay out my
just to be clear, here's the view that I'm disagreeing with. You tell me if this is your view. So I think the following is a crazy fringe view. Um, do you think it's the case, Soph? Do you think it's the case that the technology for dangerous AI will be reduced in cost so sufficiently that not only is it the case that Hamas in particular could afford it, but also they're able to afford it, and it's the case there's no other AI that exists in the meantime that would prevent them from being able to be harmful with that technology.
That's not
I
the
do.
view I said.
That is the view.
Yeah.
That's the view you
I mean,
espouse.
Wait, that's not.
but all I'll say is that I think I don't have
Absolutely
time
is.
to discuss that topic, but I do think Isaac presented something that I would say in the broader scope of things I would say. So I think that like both Avi and Isaac would be capable
I'm
of
not talking about
responding.
anything Isaac said.
I just to
Okay,
be
no,
clear,
I'm saying
at no
I don't
point,
have time to talk. So I'm just saying that I think Avi and Isaac will represent.
But she's
At
just
no
asking
point-
Soph
actually.
if you believe that or not.
No, I don't believe that, but I'm not able to debate that until later tonight. But I do think that Avi and Isaac will probably have views similar to me.
Yeah, I mean,
Just-
it
just-
sounds like you're just saying. Sorry, Avi, you can go next. It sounds like you're just saying, Soph, that we have these trends, and there's really no reason to think that there's some kind of floor that we're going to hit, where
Well, I want to clarify. Soph did say there was a floor. It was just that
There's theoretical floors, but the point is that we have to show that the floor is higher than the cost that like Hamas could afford.
Wait, I didn't say no
You have
floor
to
at
show that-
all. I was halfway through the sentence. But yeah, there's no floor that we're going to hit that's going to make it infeasible for the kind of people we don't want to get their hands on this technology, terrorist groups, etc., to be able to. This is setting aside the question of some other hedges Sinthe has, like whether some other AI can prevent it or something. But you, Soph, don't see a reason to think that there is a floor of that sort.
I mean, so I guess my error bars are probably pretty wide, but I think like the best way to look at it for Avi is just to say like, look at these trends. What are the reasons? I think a further analysis on that level. My like point estimate is that it will get cheap enough for Hamas to run a model like that. And moreover, I think that like if we were being realistic, it won't just be Hamas, right? Like realistically, what we're really talking about is like the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Iran, other actors that are hostile to Israel, like plausibly China. I think all those are within talking about, but that there's like a good enough point estimate that like, yeah, probably Hamas too. And I'm not convinced of this idea that like the U.S. AGI will be able to defend Israel, or that the Israel AGI will be.
I'm
able
not
to defend
interested in that. Yeah, I don't care about defending Israel.
No. When Soph says she's talking about your point that some kind of technology, whether it's AI, cyber, whatever, that is possessed by an ally, is going to be able, even in the case that the threshold for a terrorist group to get access to some dangerous AI is overcomable by that terrorist group, that one of our allies or us will have some tech of their own that prevents that from being a threat.
Oh, no, I don't think it's one of our allies. I don't think it's Israel. I think it's whoever gets to AI first is going to be able to prevent the threat of other AIs replacing that one AI's monopolistic power.
Wait,
yeah,
you mean,
and on that front, I think Isaac already sort of began to respond.
Wait. There's a big problem there. Wait, do you mean AGI?
Oh, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, because obviously we don't know AGI is going to happen before dangerous.
No, I don't mean AGI. I don't mean AGI. What I mean is just that AI is sufficiently advanced enough such that it could pose an extreme risk on the cyber front.
Right, and you have a twofold objection. The first is basically you're not convinced that the cost is going to you think the cost will remain prohibitively high, basically, so terrorists won't be able to get this stuff. And then you think even if it doesn't, that an ally, or the US or an ally, will have tech of their own, AI, cyber, or other, that's able to prevent any damage from being done with this narrow tech.
Well, the first one's not an accurate portrayal of the view. What I'm saying is not that the cost will remain prohibitively high forever. I think that the existing trends do suggest the cost will go lower over time. I just think that the decrease to which Hamas will be able to afford the World Destroyer 3000 would not be a sufficient amount of would not be a sufficiently quick amount of time such that other actors couldn't have access to the World Destroyer 3000.
Right. So it's a twofold thing. One of those reasons is going to be what you can appeal to say that there's not a threat. Either the cost is prohibitively high, or there's some countervailing technology possessed by the U.S. or an ally.
The U.S. an ally or China, yeah.
Sure.
There's some other AI that exists that would stop Hamas
some
from
force
using it.
that's antagonistic to terrorism.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Right. Yeah, and I'm not convinced either of those are true, as we talked about. But yeah, okay. Sorry, Soph, you were saying?
No, I have to go, and that's basically it. Is just I'm not making a point estimate. I think that all you really have to do is point at the trends. If someone wants to make the case against it, they should be able to provide the kind of argument that Sinthe is sort of pointing to, and what I'd be interested in are like the actual details.
Just to defend you, because you did make a point estimate a while ago. You can try to make some loose, shitty, high error bar point estimate. You don't want to commit very strongly to that.
No, well, I just don't have time. Like we can get more into it another
I know.
time.
I just
like
if it's a YouTube video, you'll have
point,
people in the comment section saying, "So said no point estimate, but earlier she made a point estimate."
Yeah. No, my point estimate is basically that with like really wide error bars, I expect Hamas, but like it's even sufficient just to point that I think like the KSA Iran will be able to get to that level, and I think that those are unstable state actors.
Avi, you've been trying to talk for a while.
Yeah. So just to be clear about my representation, the first point is what I represented. I think
I apologize for the interruption here, but I do have to dip eventually. I'm like 50 minutes overdue for like shit I have to do. I promised somebody I would like make some get contributions.
Well, we appreciate you actually defending the things you say. Although this should just be a basic thing that any decent person with a brain does, it's surprisingly
100%.
rare. So thank you.
No, I 100% agree.
No,
I know we've been like aggro. Well, not me and you, Isaac, but me and Avi were kind of aggro at each other. But I still love you, even if you have betrayed your country for Israel.
Yes. Well, listen, I don't. By the way, my intention is really not to be aggro with you. It's just it seems like some points it's not. I'd rather not. It's more productive.
We all have to be honest here. It is very clear that it is reflexive aggro in response to Sinthe coming in aggro. Sinthe, even you know that.
It's it's sure. Universal aggro. We're aggro back and forth. I'm not blaming Avi for it, nor do I even think it's an issue. I kind of like it. It's fun. It makes the thing more exciting to watch for other people.
I am blaming you for starting it, but in a kind way.
Yeah, no worries. All right, y'all have a good one. Peace.
Oh
wait, Avi, you wanted to say something. I wanted to
yeah. Just on the thing, like my representation, I only represented when I represented Soph's view, I just talked about what I take to be an accurate representative of her view, which is just the plausibility of Hamas acquiring with algorithmic gains or whatnot, low compute technology of that sort. In terms of the other point about like that conjunction of whether even if that were to happen, other countries not aligned with that would have sufficient technology of their own to control that in some way. That further point, I didn't comment on that at all. I didn't take that. I wasn't even under the impression that Soph took a view on that. I'm happy to talk about that, but that wasn't like part of. I never said that wouldn't be the case. I'm not convinced that of what probability that would or wouldn't be the case. It's an important variable, of course, but yeah, in terms of my representation of Soph's, I just think I just represented what was said accurately. In terms of where the conversation is now, I'm kind of in the same, like, first of all, I do appreciate you coming. I do appreciate you taking the time to talk, even if it started aggro. I do appreciate the concerns you brought up. I'm willing to change my mind, but I'm at this point again where I really do think I'm at the wash with this. And again, it's just like I see a lot of speculation. I see a lot of, not to say that it's meaningless speculation, but I see the speculation ending in very low credence here, and I do see a very strong difference in the way we interact. The one thing I will just add real quick is, even if we talk about ways of controlling this, technology that Hamas would gain or something like that, there's an important point of way we interact with that also. So if Hamas could conditionalize our way of controlling that technology by collateral damage, and different actors have different thresholds on what they would tolerate. So if Hamas has some way of saying, okay, you're going to use this technology against our technology, well, to the degree that you do that, we're going to have a certain amount of our civilians just die or something like that. We'll find a way to do that. And then you'll have the humanitarians being like, oh, we shouldn't really do that because of death. So there's all sorts of those other conditions that we have to consider as well. Not to open up that can of worms, because you have to leave, but that all those considerations, it doesn't just end there. It's like we have to to whatever degree that we need to, again, this is my position, this is why terrorists should get the full SAM. So I'm open to continuing the conversation. I really don't see at this point why I don't see much in terms of shifting my view. What I have seen is there's certain things obviously I need to look into and need to consider, but I still haven't been convinced that I shouldn't have betrayed my country in the way I so easily did.
Well, look, maybe one thing that we can agree on is just that, like, you said that you hadn't really seen any policies from either Biden or the Trump administration concerning AI. Do you agree now that, like, there are at least some policies from the Trump administration concerning AI?
Yeah, no, but not such that would give me reason to favor one over the other.
All right. Well, that makes in my opinion, that means we made at least some progress.
But just to be clear,
similar to be clear. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, just to be clear, that was presented in the video. Like that interaction happened in the video itself. Like I said, I haven't seen much in the way of one or the other, and then Soph came in and actually gave me a policy, gave me some things.
Oh, I didn't see that part. So that's interesting that already happened. But were you familiar with the doubling in electricity generation point from Trump?
I wasn't familiar with the specific doubling in electricity generation point. So I'm glad I know that. As I said, not seeing the reason. It's not clear to me that's a reason for one over the other. But at this point, yes, I'm glad I have that information now.
All right. Well, I mean, there's probably going to be some like longer conversation that we have at some other point. If you're down, hopefully. I'm always.
I'm not sure.
We'll see when we get there.
Yeah, we can play by ear. Look, I'm always generally open to learn about this. I want to have an informed view to the greatest degree that I can. So if there's something I'm missing, then I'd like to know it. I guess the frustrating thing is there's certain. I guess what would be helpful is to be able to put flags into where things get mech specky and to just acknowledge how much that gives me a reason to sway one way or the other, and to whatever degree what things can be quantified and can be put into some sort of inference, to flag that as well, and to actually see if there is an inference there to be made, and to actually like map that out, because that would be the sort of thing that would be much more persuasive to me, and much more productive to persuading me and a lot of people than kind of just like mech specking at each other, and just that sort of thing. We can mech spec at each other. We can call each other's mech specs silly. Oh, that's crazy. A mech spec, but that's that's the much more productive way would be to acknowledge the mech spec. Not to say that you can't mech spec, but acknowledge the mech spec. See to whatever degree one can do with that, but to try and see if there's areas where we could put something into some sort of quantitative terms, some sort of inverse quantitative terms. That would be a preferable way of going about that. That's the way I see it.
I think it makes for a good conversation. All right, I am desperately in need of popping out. So you have a good one. Still love you, even though you've betrayed your country. So fucked up.
I know.
All right.
Okay, bye.
Peace. You have a good one, man. So yeah.
Okay, Avi, let's just talk about ours quickly. I think that there's just a misunderstanding, so let me just make sure the point is clear. So when I say weird, I'm not talking about your reasoning process, which I already think that's the misunderstanding there. I think you think I'm talking about your reasoning process, right?
I'm not sure. I think you're talking about the way I was talking. It's weird to be talking like
it's really just a thing about, and maybe there's something I missed in the conversation, but I mean I was there having it. So I just the thing that seems a bit weird to me, and I'm not even saying I might it's possible I would do the same thing and not notice it, but just looking back at the conversation, it seems to me like it should be noted, kind of made like really fucking clear that like, hey, this is my current assessment, but I'm extremely like I have next to no confidence at all that this generalizes to once I look at all the data. Because I would, listening to that, as I think a reasonably smart person who knows you personally and was literally in the conversation, think like that, yeah, you think this sample, which you have, does probably give you some reasonable basis to generalize about the overall problem. So the only weirdness is just that I think it would be good to make that clear, because otherwise people are just going to think you're saying something stronger than you are. And I mean, if I think it, you can guarantee stupid people think it.
So wait, just to be clear about what you think what you think I was.
Yeah, we have two claims.
Yeah,
so the first is, given the data I'm available to me, this is the reasonable conclusion to reach.
About policies on, and the data we're talking about is about policies specifically.
I don't know, just all the data. That distinction
is
important to
well that saying. No, because there's different credences in terms of what. So what the specific thing I was talking about is there's two domains. There's a domain about, with respect to different policies of two different administrations, there is the domain of which I have seen, and there's the total domain of policies. Mm-hmm. And so I'm not talking about any other thing, and I'm not talking about whether we should vote for one administration or other broadly, which is what I'm talking strongly about. Mm-hmm. What I take myself to not have been talking strongly about was this domain, which is the domain of policy differences.
Okay, the way that I interpreted that conversation is that you have a reasonable confidence that you have that. I can't talk with your framing. I'll just talk about the way I see it. There's the question of what data you've seen. There's the question of the data overall, and you think that you've got a reasonable sample to make some kind of reasonably strong claim about the overall data. That's the impression that I would have gotten from listening to that conversation.
Okay, but wait, just to be clear, when you say the overall data, it's the overall data of what?
Oh, I don't even know exactly how to dial that in, and I'm not sure it matters for my point. The overall way that I interpreted that conversation is that you, I mean, just what I said a second ago, yeah.
No, it matters. Yeah, no, it really matters, because if you're talking about the overall data I've seen in terms of my reasons for, and the overall data in terms of my reasons for voting for Trump over Harris, then I am talking.
I don't think any of that matters. I'm just talking about just the general strength with which you are talking about things overall in that video gives the impression that you think whatever data you've looked at is reasonable to generalize to the whole from. I don't know.
Right, exactly, but then I do. Wait. The reason it matters, that's why it matters. Because the reason it matters is because depending on what you're quantifying over, that will just be what my view is. Yes, I do think it's reasonable to generalize over that front. If what you mean, if it's the data with respect to reasons for me to vote in favor of Trump versus Harris. If you're talking about a much more a specific subset of the data with respect to what I've seen and the total data set of that only is indexed to a specific aspect, then that may be different, which is what we were talking about in this conversation. So if you're talking about broad data for all reasons that may apply to voting for Trump over Harris, then yes, I am confident, and I do have a good degree of confidence. I do think it's reasonable to generalize. However, if you're narrowing the scope of the data set to only data that applies to vote for Harris over Trump for this specific reason, this specific consideration, which is policies of guardrails of AI, as opposed to any other reason, then yes, I'm going to be less confident. And I wasn't speaking confidently. And in fact, I was asking about data just for that reason. And I don't know. So that's the specific distinction I'm trying to draw here. then that's why it matters, because if you're talking about the former, then no, we're not in disagreement. Then presumably you don't think it would be weird, because I'm not
zeroing in on either. It's, again, I don't think that matters. I think that there's just a conversation being had, whatever exactly it's about. The overall vibe seems to be confidence about the bigger picture, and
I don't wait, no, this is not this. Wait, this is not. Wait, no, there's. Hold on. I just, when you say that you're weird,
trying to dial in things that I'm not talking about. So you just want to think about.
Well, I don't know what's weird then. What is? I'm trying to figure out what's weird.
Yeah, I think that the thing that's weird is I would get the impression listening to that you have generally strong views about basically everything talked about in the conversation.
Okay, well, okay, then I gave off an impression that I didn't mean to. The impression about the strong views that I have is
yeah, I understand you. You're saying you have a three-way disjunction, and overall you have confidence that in for each part of the disjunction you can go what you know versus all the data, and overall with the disjunction you think that generalization from that sample is reasonable. You think it's reasonable from if you just look at the one element that's about abortion, or the one that's about the
terrorism
ideology stuff, or the terrorism part, and the AI component you don't feel that way about. But yeah, that's just going to be irrelevant, because I'm just talking about the whole conversation, right? I'm just
okay. So every aspect of your conversation. Yeah. So you were under the impression that So you were under the impression, but when I said that, from what I've seen, I haven't really seen any major differences in policy or much of anything being said. You were under the impression that I've combed through their policies pretty thoroughly, and haven't found anything.
Not necessarily that you've combed through it, but just that for whatever reason you think that you've got a decent handle on it. I understand that you're saying that you, on that one specific pillar, you don't think that, I understand your view. You're saying you don't think you've combed over all the policy, and you have confidence about your assessment of with respect to what you've looked at, but not with respect to the whole space, because it's a lot bigger. I'm just saying I don't think that came across obviously in the conversation. So I think that it's I think it looks weird is the language that I initially used when I very first said this. I think it kind of looks like you're making stronger claims there. And it could be that when you take a magnifying glass to it, you can go look, no, here I'm talking about this exact claim, and here I'm talking about this exact claim. And if we carefully go over everything, you'll see I never said, granted all of that, but I'm just saying I didn't get that read. I would need to have that explained to me in order to notice something like that. So
did you get that? Did you get that? Did you maintain that read when I was asking other people in that conversation for their if they have seen or their assessment of any differences in terms of policy from different groups? Because I said they would know more than I would about policy from different groups.
No, I think you showed epistemic humility, but yeah, I mean, it seemed to me like overall there was a lot of confidence even around the first pillar.
Okay, I would be interested to know why I came off that confident if I did to you.
Yeah, but things like that are very hard to answer, because then it turns into can you analyze all the little language and that's hard. But what I can tell you is what would have definitely made me not have an impression like that, because it could just be very well that it's an error on my end, and that a more careful reading makes it obvious what you're saying. But that's missing the point, right? The point is just about how easy an error that is to make. Like when I say it seems weird, it's it's about how it's going to seem to people listening. And I think that the thing that'll just prevent that is just making it really clear that here's what I've seen. My assessment is really confident for that, but I feel like I've seen a tiny fraction of the data, and I really am next to completely agnostic about the overall picture. At no point did I get.
Well, I don't. Okay, wait. I didn't want to make the. No, it's not that I've seen a tiny fraction of the data. I mean, there's a lot of policies that there's numerous policies I've seen in terms of Trump and Harris.
Okay, whether it's a tiny amount or not, the idea that, look,
but it's just what would surprise me. It's just like, would it surprise me that actually there was a policy and you missed it? Like, oh wow, I'd be really surprised about that. Or like, oh okay, yeah. I mean, it's the okay, yeah.
What do you think my point is that I'm making here, though?
I think the point that you're trying to make is that from your perspective, it seemed like from every aspect of the conversation, from all different topics of types of evidence, not just broadly the evidence, but all different types of evidence, even when it comes to the policies about this specific issue, you think that there is a mismatch between the impression of confidence that I had versus the confidence that I versus how it came off.
Yeah, that's basically right, and not like to a point that anything you're saying seems, epistemically not virtuous, but enough that when I heard you say, actually, I'm agnostic, like basically completely agnostic about what kind of picture we'd get if we looked at the overall all the data available, that was very surprising to me. And I'm just saying, if it's surprising to me, unless there's some weird fluke where I just happen to have missed the important part, you can basically guarantee it's going to be surprising to a ton of other people.
Oh,
and further, there's a way to prevent it, which is just to explicitly say the thing that I said.
Yeah. So the things I've seen, just to be clear on what it is, it's policies in terms of what would shift. I'm pretty. I didn't say I'm agnostic, but very close to agnostic, and the reason I'm very close to agnostic is just because this is a very new thing, and I've seen a lot of policies, but I haven't seen much of any. So any policy that has come about that I also haven't spent a lot of time combing through it. So any new policy that has come about that I may not have heard of would just be new information for me. And would I be surprised if that were to be enough to shift? No, not really. So that's why I would be close to agnostic, at least on that variable. Yeah, I guess the way to prevent it would just be to again, I hate these needless clarifications, because the more I drone with needless clarifications in these videos. I don't think
this one's needless, because I just, you can continue, but I don't think that I'm one of the many retarded people who will interpret you wrong for every single hedge you didn't make. I think that I think this is a pretty if it was surprising to me, and I think I was being very charitable, and I think I'm reasonably smart. So I think that at that point you want to ask if there's something about how you're talking that is a bit weird.
The reason it was first, because in that video it wasn't just, it was me trying to get information about policy. It's me trying to explore, hey, do you know about anything about these policies, these administrations? I mean, I would get the impression that clearly I'm not that confident if I'm and even in the video I was oh, this is interesting, this is new information to me, oh, this is surprising, okay. Someone like that who's talking like that is the type of person who's talking with a lot less confidence about the overall space, especially when they're getting new information, and it's oh, that's interesting, oh, that's a little surprising, I didn't know that thing was out there. And so that was all present in the video. So I'm just wondering how someone who is saying that sort of stuff is coming off as if they're confident about the total space when they're getting.
Again, it's hard to I don't know exactly what details to point to, because that turns into a very human, psychological, what exactly is influencing you in what way.
At least you agree. Surely you agree. Surely you at least agree that I agree
that if you do a comb over of the whole thing and highlight the relevant elements, the kind of picture you're painting, where you don't have an undue amount of confidence or more confidence, the kind that I would have assumed you had there. Sorry, it's not about it being undue. It's just about it being pretty far from agnostic. Wouldn't be the right thing to take away. I hear your point that if you go over it, highlight the right elements, focus on the right things, you can get that picture. But I'm just talking I'm talking at a way more general level. I'm just saying, here I am, charitable, reasonably smart, participating in the conversation. And to me, it was surprising in this conversation today to hear you say that actually your confidence on pillar 1 is like next to agnostic. I'm not saying that your thought process is unreasonable. I'm not saying that analyzing the conversation the right kind of way won't reveal that that's clearly what you're thinking. I'm just saying what was surprising to me. And if it's surprising to me, you can bet that it's surprising to others, so it's probably worth hedging against. And I gave away 2. That's broadly what I'm saying.
I guess I will work on hedging. What do you think?
I'm not trying to batter you into a corner of hedging. You can talk however the fuck you want. I'm just the only reason we're talking about this is because you didn't like me saying that it's weird, and I wanted.
Well, the reason I didn't like it, just because the reason I didn't like it is because the impression that gives to people. The impression it gives to people is if I'm talking. I'm basically some I'm talking confidently out of my ass about something that I know little about.
No.
Well, that's how people will surely see that. I mean, that's basically what I was accused of when the interlocutor came in. Basically, that's literally the word verbatim what it was said.
I'm not totally sure how people will receive that, and maybe you're right, but that's definitely not what I'm trying to communicate. If there's some way you want me to be more clear about that kind of thing in the future, I can.
Well, what was said was it's weird to be talking this confidently about something you're next to agnostic about.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, surely you see that would be. You think that I mean that's you can see that would be the impression.
That the impression from someone hearing that would be that you.
And I'm talking out of my ass about something I know very little about.
No, I mean, I could see how someone could think that, but I could also see someone just interpreting it like, for whatever reason, Avi's just not being clear, which is how I intended it. But I'm open to the way I said it could be like misunderstood by a lot of people, though.
Okay.
I don't know how else I would say it.
For whatever it's worth. Incidentally, after this conversation, I'm not close to agnostic anymore. Because I have more data, and I'm now I have a leaning. I have a leaning that the policies that there's no difference in policies that would give me reason to shift. Not that they don't have policies, which is a different claim, but that there isn't. Now I do think there's more generalizability because now I know more, and I haven't seen a reason to believe that they shift. So for whatever it's worth, I no longer am next to agnostic. But I think I was in that conversation. I guess I could have just when I said like I haven't really seen much of anything from them. I guess I should have also said like I haven't extensively combed through it. It's also a very niche area. There may have not been a lot about it, and so I could have missed something. And I guess I just assumed that would have been clear when I was asking for those things.
I just don't even think it's obvious there's 2 domains. Like I wasn't even thinking about that conversation in terms of like what you think based on your current data versus what you think based on the overall data. Like I was just looking at it like here's your view. I don't know. This is all not that interesting. I don't think like is there any takeaway we should have from this though? Because the point.
So it could sound like I'm being pedantic at the beginning of the conversation, but the reason is just because like there is a tendency, and it's unfortunate, like when some people come in and get aggro like that, they're looking for some kind of dunk that relies on that sort of like pedantic difference. Like so, oh well, there's a false belief I have. Like okay, well, what's the false belief that I have? Well, the false belief that you have is that there's no is that it's a wash. Okay, well, when by it is a wash, do you mean I'm committed to this view that like there's no reason out there for that it's a wash, or that I'm extrapolating, or do you think it's just based on what I've seen so far? And so it's important to do all of that, because if there's an impression that I'm making a claim about the generalizable one when I'm not, then that's the difference between being committed to a false belief versus not.
Well, I agree with all that. I mean, I helped you disambiguate all that stuff.
Yeah. So in terms of being more clear, I I guess the issue is I just thought that I was giving off that impression by, again, just asking about, trying to get information about that, and even being surprised by seeing some of the things that I were seeing and expressing that.
Yeah, I hear your reasons for thinking it's clear. I don't know. Again, I can't explain the psychology. All I can say is just what surprised me. And what surprised me was hearing you say earlier in this conversation that with respect to the actual to pillar 1, we actually have to split that into two things, like based on what you currently believe or based on all the available data. And you are not at all confident about generalizing from the first to the second. I would not have taken that away, and that might be something weird about how I'm listening to the conversation. It's possible I'm in the minority. I don't know. But all I can say is
all right.
that's
So just, I think it's important just to make it clear about why it's hard to generalize from one to the other. The reason is because it's just a new sort of policy. It's just so I could have like extensive knowledge on policy with different administrations, and not have almost any understanding about their policy about like some novel position, just because it's very novel and very little has been done about it. Like very little has been written about it. So that, I mean, that might be, so that's one important thing. Because I don't want people getting the impression like, oh, well, I just have no confidence of doing one over the other because I'm just not informed. I haven't looked into any policies. I don't know any policies that they're doing. No, it's just like the proportion of policies that are on this topic are like incredibly tiny compared to almost any other issue. Yeah, I'm okay, but anyway, for whatever it's worth, I'm not agnostic anymore. At this point, I'm
a bit confused by that. It seems still like we talked with Sinthe for a while, and
a little less agnostic anyway.
Yeah, right, a little less, yeah.
A little less agnostic. I mean, anytime you have an interaction,
when you were talking about becoming not agnostic, you were talking about combing through policies, and nothing like that has happened. So I would
sure. No. I said I have a leaning, and now I have like a leaning. Which I guess is not agnostic and also not coming to politics.
Here's again, like when I heard I'm no longer agnostic, my mind goes like, okay, he's got reasonable confidence. I don't know if that's in the same family.
I see.
But
No.
Okay, so we should that would land in my mind the right way is the way you just said it, where it's I'm further from agnostic now by some small amount.
Yeah. So yes, for whatever it's worth, I'm further from agnostic now by some small amount. The reason being is that, okay, well, when you are engaging with someone, even if you don't have data set, presumably when you're engaging with people who confidently think you're wrong, they're going to bring something from that broader data set to you when they're saying that you're unaware of this.
Well, that's a crazy assumption. You have if you add the caveat that they're smart, then okay. But
yeah. If you have the caveat, they're not an idiot. Yes, someone who's not an idiot is saying that. They bring it to, and then you see what they brought to you, and then you see, okay, well, that actually is just also a wash to me. So from what I can see, so.
Right. More wash, more agnostic confirmation, or sorry, more further from agnostic, more confirmation you're in the right with what your assessment is.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay, and further, this is kind of unrelated, just a bit of meta. I'm not ever trying to make you feel like done dirty, and that's literally why I asked that, because I don't want you to feel like your thing is being brushed over. But it's just that I don't know when Sinthe is gonna actually just randomly get interested and then abandon her timeline and stay talking to you for 2 hours, and if there's like a limited amount of time and I've only got one thing, it seems like the way I think about these things is that a person has a kind of right of response, kind of sort of like to the same level as whatever has been said about them. So it's sort of like if the other person makes a baseless assertion and you make a baseless assertion back, which is not wrong to make a baseless assertion, sometimes we just say what we think and we haven't discussed our reasons yet, then we're pretty much at even territory. Or if we're not sure we've even semantically converged, we're pretty much at even territory. So what I didn't want to happen was for one of you to start stacking stuff on the scale, because then the other side gets kind of a right of response, and now that's the whole debate topic, and we're burning through the little time we have. So hopefully that reasoning makes sense to you.
Wait, just say that again real quick.
That's okay. Yeah, so the way I generally think about these things, like if I'm sort of modding a conversation or just what I think is fair, is I think if one side says something and the other person says something with sort of the same level of epistemic weight behind it, that you're pretty much at that point you're sort of even. Nobody really needs to say more. Like if one person makes a baseless assertion and the other person makes a baseless assertion, which there's nothing wrong with making baseless assertions. Sometimes we just say our view and we don't support it when we say it. We're just saying what it is. If one person says a baseless assertion, the other says or negates the baseless assertion, then right now the scale's even. It's not like one person has stacked up a bunch of stuff on one side and the other person kind of has a right of response. So what I didn't want to happen was for either you or Sinthe to start stacking a bunch of stuff on the scale, because then the other side has a right of response, and now we have to get into this whole discussion about whatever that was about the weirdness of saying things like that. So that's my motivation there, is like we have a small amount of time. The scale's pretty much even right now. Baseless assertion on each side. Let's just be happy with that and move along. Yeah.
I understand. Yeah, I understand.
You understand my idea of evenness there? Mm-hmm. It's like one person said a baseless thing, the other person said a baseless thing. Pretty much it's even. There's no need to... It's not like one person laid out a bunch of shit and then supported it, and all you've got is your baseless assertion. And now they're standing there saying the thing in disagreement with you with way more strength on their side, and we're just going to move past it, because that's getting done dirty. But if it's just you've both said a thing, there's not really been any evidence given, there's no need for one of you to start stacking up the reasons to believe the thing, because then you're giving the other person a right of response, and now that's going to become the whole debate topic, and our time is limited.
Yeah. No, I understand all that motivation. The motivation on my end is that, again, just when that sort of thing is said, like, okay, well, yeah, it's weird for you to say this with this amount of, I'm not going to repeat myself, but
yeah.
The concern I have is that, okay, well, and when you assent to that, it's like, okay, it seems like you're assenting to something. I'm not even sure what you're assenting to, but it seems like, from my perspective, it seems like you're assenting to something you didn't intend to assent to, or at least that's how it would be interpreted by quite a bit of people. That's actually how I interpreted it. I interpret it as not the sort of thing that you were saying, even with all the clarifications. And I either interpret it into saying, like, oh, you're confidently talking about the Trump wrote broadly about those two different domains, which is not what you were getting at. You were getting at even in terms of this narrow indexed evidence, and then about the talking out of my ass thing, which is also not what you were saying. So then that's the point for why I had motivations to talk about that. Because and it's also important with the way some interlocutors engage in. It's like, especially when they're aggro like that, they're trying.
Yeah,
it's almost like
undermine the rhetorical dunks.
Yeah, it's like they're trying to get in any rhetorical dunk. They're trying to get into any little thing that, like, and then especially if they can get away with it by like having the conversation move on where they got that in.
Right.
Then they get the giggle, and like that is like incredibly annoying.
Yeah. So I'm trying to get you right now, and I think you do, to understand that I'm also sensitive to that, and that what I was doing was actually making sure it's even and then moving along, and not letting you stack up a ton of stuff. So now it's actually uneven. Because even is just she says some shit, you say some shit, no reasons given, let's move along and get the thing done that we have limited time for. But we move into a not even condition if you start stacking up a ton of reasons. So I was sort of trying to, like, what I would do if I was the debating party there would just be like, okay, I'm not even sure we're talking about the same thing there, and if we are, then I don't accept that, but let's just not go in that direction. Because now you've evened the scale, you've both said your shit, it's either semantic non-convergence or equal weighting on each side, and now we can just move to the next thing.
Yeah, I know. I understand all that. I understand the motivation. It's just yeah. I guess it's just the connotations of what you seem to be assenting to. Seemed like that. Yeah, it didn't seem to be. It didn't seem to be even. It's even in the sense that assertions were just made. It's just that you assented to an assertion. It just struck me that you were assenting to something like that, and I'm not even sure that it was meant in the same way that you meant it.
Right.
I'm still not even sure about that, by the way, now that you've clarified what you meant.
Yeah, it's possible Sinthe means something, by saying weird, that you think she understood that differently?
Well, I presented 3 different ways. Yeah, I presented or at least was saying it in that way. Maybe now she understands it the same way, but I mean, I presented 3 different ways in this conversation were presented what you could mean by that, and I took the first 2, what you didn't actually assent to be like the first things that struck me.
Oh, so you're just clarifying why you were motivated to keep talking about it. Is
yes,
you thought I was signing off on something that if I took time to understand what she's saying would just be like crazy to assent to.
Yes.
Yeah, so I guess I kind of feel similarly, where that's what I would say instead of starting to stack reasons, because once you start stacking reasons, that starts becoming the debate topic. Again, this is assuming a limited time frame. If you have unlimited time, then sure, take all the time you want on each point. But if you have half an hour or something like she was initially saying.
Yeah, that's why we're having that part of the discussion here.
Right. Yeah. Okay. But, yeah. No, I just didn't want you to feel that you were hard done by or anything, but and to understand why I wanted to kind of just even the table and move past that part. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I understand.
Okay. All right. Okay. I don't have anything else to say. Does anyone else want to say anything here? Speak now or don't. Okay. All right. Have a good one.
All right. Later.